Big Ten Live, number 6, folks. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. I pulled a Mark Rogers this afternoon. I don't normally start the live stream, at least my live streams, with a blank background and then slide slowly into the screen. But I did that for this special evening where I'm filling in for I shouldn't say a sick Mark Rogers. I don't think he's sick, but the voice of college football, Mark Rogers. We're going to hang out for the next couple of hours. And then I understand our guy, John, who has been a big part of this show in recent weeks, he'll be taking over during the second 2-hour block here at the voice of college football. A couple things. This is my first time here with everyone as a part of this show. So, yes, I am an Iowa guy, but love to talk Iowa football, Big Ten football, college football. So, of course, this is a Big Ten show. Bring your questions and comments into the live chat. And of course, as Mark says, each and every night, best analysis and debate. So I'm all for debating, but in order to debate properly, we have to have topics and we have to have engagement. I am going to throw the invite link for anybody who wants to join the show. Please do so, because one thing I pride myself on with all of my content is I don't go off a scripted show. There are times where I have a guest on and I can't spell, apparently. Join the show, folks. I apologize for that typo. There are times, though, when I have interviews and I, of course, am prepared. I'm not saying I'm not prepared tonight, but I want to be able to talk about what people have on their minds. And if it's conference realignment, if it's spring football, we can certainly discuss it. Iowa football will hold its spring game here in a couple of weeks. So I know Michigan just had their spring game, a week ago. So this is a busy time of year for spring football. Summer conditioning will be big for teams like Iowa and other teams looking to build the interior, or I should say build in the trenches, Nebraska being one of those teams. I'll be anxious to see what Wisconsin will do, given the coaching pedigree of Luke Fickell and what they've done in the transfer portal, what they continue to do in the recruiting cycle. It's going to be an interesting year. And then, of course, the changes at Purdue. I said Nebraska. Illinois has gone through some changes, and it should be fascinating. We're multi-streaming. We're simulcasting to a number of channels, folks, whether you're watching on the main channel here at the Voice of College Football or you're watching on our Iowa channel, our Michigan channel, Nebraska, Ohio State, whatever the case may be. Welcome here, Penn State fans as well. I've had a bit of a tumultuous past with a few fan bases, Michigan being one, Penn State being another, so forgive me. Ironically enough, I don't think I've had too many bad experiences with Nebraska fans or Ohio State fans. So if you're a Penn State fan and you dislike me, well, that's fine. I'm just you can come on here and let me know why. Let's go to our first caller here at the Voice of College Football. Well, we can't do that because our caller does not have their microphone on. Poindexter Jones is waiting to jump on the live show. Again, I threw the live stream link, the StreamYard link in the chat if you want to join in and again, talk college football I'm here with you until 7 Central, 8 Eastern, and our guy John over at the Michigan channel will be taking over at that point. So we're giving Mark the night off. Maybe Mark will call in. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's go to our first caller. I think we've got the audio situation figured out. Mr. Poindexter Jones, we have you on the line. I am not hearing you. Let's see. Can anybody hear our caller? Anybody at all? I'm not hearing anything. All right. Let's try it again. See if we can get him on here. No, device not connected, Poindexter. Don't know what's going on. So we'll continue to try to. Okay, one more time. Let's try one more time. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? All right. Well, you send me a private chat when you've got your audio figured out and you can see your audio levels on your settings tab here on StreamYard. Jason, I see in the chat already. Jason, a regular participant here and one of the premium subscribers here at the Voice of College Football. Almost said From the Hawkeye of the Storm. My work is found over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm, folks. If you haven't checked out my channel, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, it's been a slow last 7 days. Part of that has been we've had women's basketball finally finish up, and I just needed a bit of a break. so I've kind of taken some time. We'll have some content on my channel dropping here later today, and of course throughout the week ahead, football content, but also Iowa basketball content. The women flying high and with some serious recruiting momentum, I think that they'll be able to tap into. We'll see what they can do in the transfer portal. That's a discussion for another day, given the lack of scholarships. And of course, the men got a commitment today out of the transfer portal. So transfer portal season, very busy, and this will extend over into the open football cycle that will open up here in a couple of weeks after towards the end of spring ball. I think there's a week. Is it in next week? I believe that the next cycle opens up, the next window. And so, boy, what will that hold? I anticipate that it will be slower than it was in December. Part of that being maybe not slower in total names wise. I'm guessing there will be less people overall in the portal. However, you would not expect the bigger names to enter like they did back in December, because one would think that many guys are leaving in April because they're not on end of spring depth charts. So that doesn't mean you can't add positive pieces. Iowa's one that needs to add another piece, I think, at receiver. And probably a couple other places as well, but specifically at receiver. And I'm sure some of those other programs that we led off with are in the same boat. Let's see. David is in Ohio. Mr. David is with us. David, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, and how are you, Corey? Pleasure to see you.
How are you?
Yeah, excellent. Always here to talk Big Ten football, college football on Mondays with Mark. So,
absolutely. I'm sorry I can't be Mark, but we'll do my best to be Corey, and whether it's Buckeyes or whatever. Let's talk.
I've heard your stuff in the past. You do a great job, and I know we've talked in the past a couple of times. I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting right now, where things sit currently. I will say, as an Ohio State fan, I'm highly encouraged about what's been transpiring currently in recruiting. Ohio State did get a commitment from Aaron Noland, I should say, quarterback. I believe the number 8th rated quarterback in this recruiting class. I'm encouraged by that. I would like to have kept Dylan Raiola in this class, who was the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 prospect in the country. I found it interesting that he was considering Nebraska. I think the only reason he was considering that was because of a family connection. And now I hear he's possibly going to Georgia, which I also find interesting. I know that Georgia's a successful program, but Kirby Smart has not been really known for developing the quarterback position down there. I mean, yes, Stetson Bennett has had success, but
he's a walk-on.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. If you had to bet a large sum of money that 3 years from now Stetson Bennett will no longer be in the NFL, would you make that bet?
Well, besides the fact that we're operating in a hypothetical world, because I don't bet, but
yeah,
I mean, do I have confidence that he's going to go to the NFL and be great? I'd kind of equate him to I shouldn't even say poor man's version of, but Trace McSorley. I kind of look at him like I don't think physically. Now McSorley's last I checked, he was backing up Lamar in Baltimore, I think.
Right.
So I mean, maybe he finds his spot as a backup somewhere. I don't know. Where is he projected to go in the draft? Where's Stetson projected to go?
I mean, I couldn't. Maybe 5th round. I mean,
yeah,
could you see?
I would have a hard time seeing him.
I could not project him to. I mean, I think he could be a journeyman type quarterback. I mean, I don't see him being a significant starter in the NFL. That's bottom line what I'm saying.
I mean, I think I think it was. I'm not going to rip anybody Mark has on, but it was a Greg Peterson on the Nebraska show here a few weeks ago. I was watching Mark's show, and Greg made some comment about how USC can't compete with what Nebraska can give you NIL wise, specifically toward Raiola, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Based on what world are we living in that you somehow think there's more? I mean, I understand it's a totally different market. We obviously know that there are not 2 more extremes out there than Lincoln, Nebraska versus LA.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, what you said is valid. If you're going to go anywhere, you're going to go somewhere where you have a track record of developing quarterbacks, whether that be Ryan Day at Ohio State or certainly Lincoln Riley at USC. But I just wonder that the figures are so big. I think Greg is right about one thing. The figures are so big with these top quarterbacks. And we're talking about
Right.
the best quarterback in this class. I don't know what George is able to do NIL wise. And I'm sure Raiola thinks, hey, I'm going to be here for 3 years and I'll be a plug and play guy. And I'm going to get drafted in the first round regardless of where I play. So if I can make this much more money in Athens, Georgia, as opposed to having to be in Podunk, Nebraska, I'm going to do it.
Well, as an Ohio State fan, remember what happened with Justin Fields down there. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
true.
I mean, obviously, it didn't work out, to our benefit. He came up here, played extremely well. Would love to have seen him have a full 2020 season, but 2020 was what it was.
And let's be
Uh,
honest. Let's be
yeah,
honest too. If there's
yeah,
one school you look at that were jumping into this, so you brought up Raiola's. He's a legacy recruit. His connections to the program with his family.
yeah,
But if there's one school that has kind of been a train wreck as it relates to quarterback production, it's been Nebraska. Like
right.
we've had hype around we've had hype around both Martinez quarterbacks. We've had hype with Tommy Armstrong. None of those guys have panned out except Adrian, who had to go to a different school to generate. And I don't know if he's going to end up being an NFL guy, but he goes to the Kansas State and looks like a Heisman contender at K State. So yeah, I mean, if you're certainly Georgia, maybe doesn't have the track record that an Ohio State or USC does, but boy, if you're just looking at developing quarterbacks, Nebraska's not the place to go.
Could a case be made that the lack of development of Adrian Martinez might have cost Scott Frost his job?
Sure. I mean, sure. I
Yeah,
think if you're pointing to something on the football field, I as an Iowa guy watching Nebraska football for the last how many years,
yeah,
I just saw special teams. I saw coaching, and that's why I was very clear during the season, not to go on a tangent here, but I was very clear during the season my stance on Nebraska. If I was a Nebraska fan, I was hoping that they would make that change during the season because it appeared that it consistently appeared like Nebraska was not far off from being good. But the
right.
problem is they couldn't get out of their own way, and whether it be special teams gaffes or turnovers, and some of those were Adrian Martinez, it's not like they were getting pushed around up front. So yeah, I definitely think that you have to blame Frost for some of the lack of development, and vice versa. I don't know. I don't know who you. I don't know if it's the system wasn't good for Adrian Martinez or what the case may be, but Adrian Martinez made Scott Frost and that entire staff look pretty bad last year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, how much of we always talk about this in the NFL. A coach is tied to his quarterback, to a great extent, and I think to a certain extent, you're seeing that in college. I mean, they lost a ton of close games, and he always seemed to make that big mistake, that fumble or throw that key interception at like the
True.
worst times. And but you know what? I tend to agree with you about Frost's in-game coaching. It's interesting. I see these coaches that kind of screw up very talented teams. I think of like I always reference James Franklin, at Penn State, and I always make the comparison with Mark between James Franklin and Les Miles. But Les Miles at LSU used to find a way to screw up close games and lose them at LSU, and James Franklin was kind of like well, Mark thinks Miles is much worse at that than Franklin is, but I think Franklin is proven to have a pretty good track record of screwing up close games. And, I think that's definitely emblematic of the Frost era at Nebraska. I think no better example was their opening game of last year, where I think in many ways, that might have been the final straw.
And so where I typically travel this conversation, David, is
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, it's fair to put some blame on Martinez. However, not only you see what he goes to Kansas State and did, and part of that was he was able to use his legs a lot more than he really ever was at Nebraska. But when you watch Nebraska football over the past several years, it wasn't just Martinez. Like I said, how many
That's
times do
true.
we see stupid plays on special teams? And
Yeah.
so
That's right.
if you're having these issues, like if this guy's constantly making mistakes and dropping the football, this guy's missing blocks, and like this is a top down issue. And so that's when I look at it, and from my viewpoint, say this is coaching, and it's not necessarily
Yeah.
in game coaching, David. It's, are we teaching discipline? Do we have a good culture? Like all those things. I look at Iowa. I know a lot of people don't like Iowa except Iowa fans, but you look at Iowa, they're not sexy with how they play. They're not going to be. They're stubborn. There's nepotism, all that stuff. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's all valid. But they're disciplined. And there's obviously strong culture and strong coaching. for at least defense and special teams because they're not making these big mistakes. And even on offense, they don't commit a lot of turnovers. So there is an inherent culture that Nebraska just hasn't seen in a long time.
Well, the sad thing for Frost is I thought he was recruiting at certainly a high enough level,
Sure.
to win some games. I think he was averaging recruiting somewhere in the teens, which on that side of the division, in the Big Ten, should be able to win you, at least 7, 8, maybe 9 games. I mean, at least get you to a bowl game,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
uh, yeah,
they've Rule has done well so
yeah,
far from what I've seen. I'm certainly no recruiting guru, but
yeah,
from what I've seen, he's done well. And I think it's probably unfair for us to sit here and judge Rayola's decision based on Scott Frost's lack of QB development because this is a totally different regime. So, what has Matt Rule done at Baylor? What did he do at Temple with developing quarterbacks?
yeah,
Honestly, you probably tell me better than I could. Um, he obviously has got some experience in the league. But again, a guy like Rayola, I'm not saying he's not going to have to prove himself once he gets to college, but
yeah,
if the hype around this kid is if it pans out, he's going to get drafted regardless of where he goes. And that's why my guess is, there's just no way. Like people who say, "Well, you should be loyal to your team," and he's a Nebraska at heart. Like when you got people offering you 7 figures, put yourself in that position before you judge a kid who
sure,
turns it down. I
sure,
just like, and I'm not saying Nebraska's not, there's not big donors and NIL people that are offering him 7 figures. I'm confident there is, but say, let's just play hypothetical. Say Nebraska's, they got a donor who's offering him 2 million to play, 2 million per year to play at Nebraska for a minimum of 3 years, and then Georgia, it's 4 million per year.
sure.
I mean, that's a huge that's think about what that is or what it accrues to be over a 3 to 4 year period. That's a big and you're really going to sit here and tell me that you think it's a better decision for me to go to Nebraska over Georgia? Georgia defending champions and I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for Rayola as far as why if he ends up going to Georgia. Last I had heard was USC, and I've been kind of out of the loop the last week, so that's apparently changed since the USC hype.
Well, I get Georgia. I mean, Georgia is obviously the success of the program, and it's interesting when you speak dollars and cents in these student athletes. I mean, I get it. I think of the dollars and cents that they're going to get after they leave college and sign a big time NFL contract is usually what we kind of, associate that with. But the NIL game has totally, I agree with you. I mean, me and Mark have had this discussion. I don't know what your feelings are on this NIL thing. I don't think we're going to see, unfortunately, the NCAA get involved in kind of regulating and doing the right things that they need to do, with the situation being as it is. But just to maybe get your opinion on it, from what I understood it to be, it was originally designed to help these players make money off their name, image, and likeness once they got to college, i.e., if their jersey was selling or if they did advertising for XYZ, car company or insurance company or whatever, it was going to allow them to make some money from doing so. From what I'm hearing now, it's just basically allowing these programs to do the quiet part out loud, which is i.e., drop the bags, give them some cash to get recruits to come to your school, which was, from what I understood, not the original intent of it. But far be it from colleges to, play by the rules and go by what the original intent of what it was supposed to be. That's
Sure.
why I say once we opened up this can of worms, it was not going to lead us down a good path. And I think most people knew that, but they didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, and you're not putting toothpaste back in the bottle, right?
Nope.
So
Nope.
it's out. It is what it is. Now, I will say, not to divert from your question, and I think it's a fair
Yeah.
question, but you said something about the NCAA. Do I think the NCAA will do something about it like they should? Do you want the NCAA to do something about it?
Well, to be fair, I never wanted it in the first place.
Well,
But you're right. You can't put you can't put the genie back in the
we're past
bottle.
that.
Yeah, I get your point. The ship's already sailed.
My point is
But
what I'm talking about with regulation, David,
yeah,
is I don't have confidence the NCAA can get anything done. So I don't care about to say, well, the NCAA needs to do something. I don't know about that. I think it might be better if they completely squandered and they just go away, which I think could end up happening. I don't know if that will happen. I looked at March Madness ratings, I think were pretty low this year comparative to what they typically are. That's the bread and butter of that organization.
Mhm.
I don't want the NCAA sticking their hands in this thing because they're the reason we're here where we are. If they had
Well,
been proactive in their thinking years ago and had created incentives and created uh, different ways and avenues for athletes to benefit, when you have schools and conferences making millions upon millions and millions of dollars, instead they refused to evolve, and eventually, as you and I both know, it got taken to a Supreme Court, and now they have no choice. So I don't trust them to make good decisions with any of this. And I would rather what I would rather is for the entire for that NCAA to go away and for the system to evolve to where college football is run independently, if you will, and you have maybe not a czar, but you have some sort of a system separate from the NCAA. If the NCAA wants to keep college basketball, women's college basketball, whatever. That's fine. I don't think that's all going to go away because I don't know how all that can operate without some sort of, uh, you know, complete legislation, if you will. But college football, just to me, I don't trust anything NCAA were to do if they get their paws involved here.
well, I think what the NCAA did was give it to just, let the conference commissioners and the presidents and these folks go ahead and take care of it and regulate it and do what they want with it. And, in many ways, that's like letting the inmates run the asylum.
Sure.
I mean, and they weren't going to do so. I mean, if it came down to acting like it was supposed to be enacted. They them turning it in a different direction, which, as I mentioned to you, they've already turned it in a different direction than it was intended to. The presidents or the commissioners of these conference weren't going to care. They weren't going to do anything about it. So, I mean, I think that most of the people that wanted NIL have always been in favor of paying the players. I think they should just be honest and come out and say that.
So
I'm not in favor of that. Have never been in favor of that
why?
because this is not professional sports. This is college sports,
Well, okay. Well,
and
I get what you're saying.
and
Why?
and and I
What?
think that there is something to college athletics being college and pros being pros.
So is it just you like the idea of there being college and pros, or
Yeah,
what's the substantial reason why you are
well,
identifying?
first of all, everybody puts it out there as an idea, but you know what nobody ever does? You know where the devil is, Corey? The devil's in the details. Nobody ever wants to go out there and put out a substantial plan and say, "Here's how we're going to pay them. Here's who's going to get what. The offensive tackle's going to make this. The quarterback's going to make this." And once you get the dollars and cents into the equation, yes, I mean a lot of the things can go wrong. And then you're going to have the other team sports that may be coming looking for their money because if you ever notice, everything sounds good in theory, but until you put the plan out there and say how this is going to be done and how the money's going to be doled out,
So
you
I'm
know what I
just
mean?
I know we're going all over the place with this call, and that's fine. And right now,
No, well, I think once we went down the NIL road,
that's
this
fine.
was yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. This is Big Ten related. I'm
yes.
just curious, and I'm not. I respect your opinion on the whole thing, but I'm just curious. What is wrong with players benefiting off their name, image, and likeness in and of itself? I'm not advocating for you to endorse pay for play, which is basically what this has turned into.
Yes.
But I'm just curious. You're what I'm gathering from you is that were never in favor of players being able to even benefit off their name, image, and likeness.
Well, I was leery about it because as I mentioned, I thought it would lead to basically
Okay.
this,
Okay, but
and yeah,
if you knew that it would be regulated, David, and it would be based solely on players being able to market themselves, be endorse brands, be involved in commercials and ads, and make money and sell their jerseys and be a part of the NCAA college football EA Sports game and all that stuff. Are you in favor of that?
Well, I mean, I'd have to see it. You know what I mean? Seeing is believing. I mean, my whole point of this was, and I guess you're going to, use the term the slippery slope theory, if you want to use that, or if you just want to say that this would lead to that. That was my concern is that, especially considering you have a toothless NCAA that's not willing to enforce anything, not willing to do anything. I knew they wouldn't. I knew they would leave it to the presidents. I knew they would leave it um, to the conference commissioners and those folks to deal with this. But yeah, I had no confidence that once they put this in place, it wouldn't lead to something that it wasn't intended to, and it has. And I do think the people that advocated for it just if you put them under truth serum and ask them, they would say, "Yes, we should just pay the players."
Don't you think though? I mean that this again, you go back to the NCAA.
Yeah.
The reason we're here and the reason why it's become the slippery slope that it has is because the NCAA, their hand was forced because they weren't proactive. Again, had they instituted something prior, um, to give players more power and to give them an opportunity to benefit off these things, as opposed to this legalities at play here, basically forcing them to do this, they would have been able to regulate things. They have no power now over this
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say overall, just I mean, in closing, is if we had a stronger NCAA, I guess I could be with you, Corey. And if I saw the details of the plan and how it was going to be done and how it was going to be enforced and how it was going to be regulated, I guess I could get on board. Just bottom line,
Yeah.
as far as that goes. But you know, call me cynical, but I would call me a realist in saying I knew it was going to get to this.
But you knew what it was going to get. Last thing, you knew it was going to get to this after the Supreme Court made the
Yeah,
ruling, or when it was even in discussion.
right. I'm not surprised that it led to players just not getting paid for their name, image, and likeness when they got to college, and it led to basically, as I mentioned to you earlier, the colleges just dropping the bags to get recruits.
I'm just curious. Did you? I'm guessing you haven't, and that's fine. I would
Yeah,
encourage you. I don't know how much you like to listen to NIL talk, and I'm sure you've listened to a lot of it.
yeah.
Go on to my channel sometime,
All
and
right.
even though you're an Ohio State guy, go back and listen to. We had Iowa's NIL swarm. It's called the Swarm, the primary Iowa NIL collective for football. The leader, the founder of that collective, we had him on for like 3 hours during. I think it was right after the season, and it was very insightful. If you listen to what he had to say about how schools are getting around these things, you talk about incentivizing players and what that actually means through NIL, and it was very interesting. I would encourage you to go back and listen to
Okay.
that. And we took calls and questions, and some of it's Iowa related, but some of it gives you a good feel for how these collectives operate. Because I mean, it makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's right, but when you have collectives and you have donors who are able to say, "Hey, this is my money. I want you to do this." And when you're there, when you're at Iowa, when you're there for 3 years, I'll have you, I don't know, collect some. I'll have you sell some autographs at my shop, or
Yeah.
at my store, my place of business. Like is that worth the $3 million he's about to delve out? No, but who has the right to say that that's wrong? That's the market is wrong there. So
Sure.
you're right in that it's a slippery slope and it's a free for all. And again, I just go back to the NCAA and their failure to be proactive and have forethought with all this. That's what I
Listen,
attribute it to.
I may be in the minority in this. I mean, a lot of people have been on board with wanting to compensate these players in some way, shape, or form, and they always hit me back. Well, the coaches make this much, and look at the TV deals, and look at all this, and I get all that, but I mean, they are collegiate athletes. I mean, I said to Mark that I think people using this line that they're all starving and they can't afford pizza has been a little bit overplayed. You're going to have to show me the percentage of football players that can't afford a slice of pizza nowadays. I don't think it's a high percentage. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
I mean,
for the
but
rec,
people sell that poor mouth theory that they're all, starving. I think what they just want to say is there's so much money coming in. Let's give them a piece of it. Just
sure.
say that. Don't say that
Yeah.
they're all. I mean, I got to see the percentage of them that are starving and can't afford, a slice of pizza or something like that, which you know that theory where they put them out there as saying that they're all poor and they need this money, and if
I
not,
know that
they'd be
I've interviewed Iowa recruits, David, who have literally come on my show and said, "Hey, part of the reason I picked Iowa is because of the food, because they just feed us to death."
yeah, there you
And so,
go.
like, even yeah, that's and I don't hear that a lot, but if anybody wants to make that claim, that's ridiculous. But I think it's fair. By the way, for a long time, I was on your side in this when I didn't want this wheel to turn. I did not want players start getting paid. I liked the essence of what college athletics is. However, I also have acknowledged now with time and as these TV deals have progressed that there's just no way personally feel like I can sit here and say the players don't deserve to get paid something. or at least at the bare minimum, to be able to make money off their own name. I just, so that's where I'm coming from. But I understand, and I don't think any of us want to lose the flavor and the very essence of what college sports has always been. And
Yeah.
growing up, people would ask me, "Hey, what's your favorite pro sports team?" And David, I live in Iowa. We don't
Hmm.
have a pro sports team. And
Yeah.
I would say I'm more of a college sports guy. Like, I watch the NFL, I watch the NBA. I'm a college sports guy, though. And part of the reason is not only because there's no pro sports teams in Iowa, but part of the reason is I like the idea that you can build an attachment to players
Yes.
because they're here for 3 to 4 to 5 years, and they're playing for their teams. They're playing for their school, for their university, for their fans, for their coaches. When you get to the NBA and the NFL, they're playing for a paycheck.
Right.
In the snap of a finger, all that has been compromised to some extent, because no longer do you build relationships with people or players for 3 to 5 years, because guys are jumping in the transfer portal 2 or 3, 4 times,
Yeah.
and they're getting paid. So I understand being frustrated over, because it's changed the very essence of the game.
Well, think about the three things they've done. They've expanded the playoff, much like the NFL. They've given you a transfer portal, which is there via free agency,
Right.
and they're already starting to compensate the players. I mean, where is the line between college and pros? Because I don't think it's blurred anymore. I think it's
I agree.
I mean, you know, I don't
Yeah,
think that line's being blurred anymore.
I
So,
agree.
a pleasure to talk with you, Corey.
Thank you,
It's
David.
I hope I know we got off into the NIL stuff, but I went down that road with Mark before, and I wanted to kind of get your opinion on it. So,
Yeah, I would like to think that I've evolved in my opinion of it, but I agree with you on this fundamental fact, or I should say opinion. There needs to be some regulation. I just don't trust the NCAA to do it. There's got to be. It's the wild wild west. When I see these players, and I'm talking about college basketball too, and I see these players. I mean, literally, there are guys who like. You follow college basketball, David?
a little bit, not as much as football.
Adam Miller, I think, is that his name? Adam Miller started off at Illinois, transferred to LSU, and is now in the portal again. Like, and he's not the only one. Lots of guys are doing that. I mean, there's guys. I saw a guy the other day that jumped in the portal. He's been in the portal 4 different times.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's just a different college sports world than I grew up watching. So,
yeah. All right. Well, it's a pleasure talking college
thank you,
football with you,
David.
Corey.
Thank you, sir. Appreciated that call from David, and our line is open. We got Chris waiting in the queue. I think I threw the StreamYard link up in the chat, the live chat. So if we want to, I'll go ahead and do that again. I know that typically on my shows I throw it up in the description, but I did not do that here on Mark's channel, partially because I couldn't. I don't think I could. I'll throw it up in the live chat again if you want to jump on. We don't have to talk about NIL. It's certainly Big Ten related. Our caller David brought up Dylan Raiola. I don't follow his recruitment like I know a lot of college football fans are, because decommitted right from Ohio State. USC's been on the docket. Now apparently Georgia's involved, and certainly he's a Nebraska legacy guy. So I did appreciate this comment from Turd Ferguson. Does Nebraska go 500 or better this year? Before we add our next caller in here, let's just look at the schedule. And I'm sure Mark has done this before, but let's just look at the schedule. Not counting the red and white spring game, which I think either the red or the white will win. Haha. I think they've got a good chance of going at least 500. You got at Minnesota game 1. What does Minnesota look like? They're dealing with some change there. They've kind of been an odd one. They lost a lot on the offensive line last year, bounced back with a pretty darn good running game, albeit with Mo Ibrahim. Callie McManus looked pretty good in the bowl game. So my guess is Minnesota wins that game on a Thursday. One of the first games of the season on August 31st. And then they get Colorado on the road, and what an interesting game that will be, given the fact that there had been rumors circulating about potential Deion Sanders to Nebraska hire before he announced he would be headed to Boulder. So that game will be at Boulder. I don't know. What are we going to get with Deion Sanders and the Buffs? I mean, they've done a lot of work in the transfer portal. They offer like every 4- and 5-star guy out there. Not saying they get a lot; they're getting a lot of commitments from those guys, but I could see Nebraska being 0-2. I could see them being 0-2. They should beat Northern Illinois at home. I don't know what the Huskies are going to look like this season. Louisiana Tech, don't know much about the Bulldogs, frankly. Obviously, it's been a good program in the past. I would guess that Nebraska's at least 2-2 by the time we head into that Michigan game in Memorial Stadium. I would have to take Michigan. Again, I'm just going through this just kind of on a whim because this question was brought up in the chat. So sure, I'd probably say at this point Nebraska's at least 2-3, which isn't good, but again, they had an opening game against a Big Ten opponent, and Michigan's really good. At Illinois, I mean, again, a lot of competitive. I see a lot of competitive games on the schedule. There's not a lot of games that I say Nebraska can't compete in and potentially win. I'd probably take Illinois. I'll take Nebraska against Northwestern. So what do I have them at now? 3-4. If I'm counting correctly. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'd take them against Purdue because I don't know what Purdue's going to look like with a new coaching staff. So there's 4-4. Michigan State's a weird one too. I'd probably take Michigan State at home, but man, they were a bipolar team this last year. Maryland and in Memorial Stadium. I mean, again, they had great moments this past season with Tagovailoa. I still don't know what to make of Michael Locksley. I've been critical of him in the past, but there have been games and certainly with Tagovailoa where they've looked the part. And at Wisconsin against Iowa, man, I'm looking at probably pretty close to 6-6. Can they do better than 6-6? Sure. If they can win those first two games at Minnesota, at Colorado, you're looking at probably a 4-0 start. And then I guess if any program could find a way to do it, it'd be Nebraska. But I think I'd have to squint to see anything worse than 6-6. And I certainly think the Buffalo game's winnable. That Minnesota game is going to be tough, but with a quarterback who's played some, but is still very, very young and inexperienced and raw, who knows, especially on a Thursday night. You just never know. And that would certainly imagine what I know we've said this before, but if they could get a win against a Big Ten team, we said the same thing when they went to Ireland last year. Boy, if they could beat Northwestern, imagine what can happen. They go across the continent or go across the globe and lose. So, never know, but I would say my prediction, just looking off that schedule, I would say pretty close to 500. Luis, where's the other host, the goofy doofy one? Don't talk about Mark that way, Luis. That's not kind. I don't even know what goofy doofy means, but Mark is not with us this evening, but he's handed the show over to myself, and that might be a scary prospect for some, but we're going to do our best here. We've got another hour and 15 on here. Let's go to Chris, who's been waiting on hold.
Hey, Corey.
Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Oh, I enjoyed your last caller. I think you guys touched on some important things. I think I'm just kind of curious, and you probably already talked about it, so I'll let you decide what to say. But this whole name, image, and likeness, I'm not sure I really understand it. I kind of know in principle what it's about, but who's actually paying? I mean, where's the money? Is it being funneled through? I mean, I don't even know where it would be. Can you explain that to me?
Well, that's why I brought up to David the show I did with Brad Heinrichs of the Iowa Swarm Collective, because the money cannot come from the school itself. And are there dirty dealings going on? Sure, there were dirty dealings going on before the NIL era, but you've got donors involved, you've got organized collectives involved, which raise money and then distribute. With the Iowa Swarm, you've got part of the collective, which is a set amount that's given to each scholarship player. You've got another aspect of the brand or the company, the nonprofit, that enables it to give some student athletes more money. But what they say, Chris, is this is an important part of this. I remember what Brad told me is what they have to do, and this is what schools are doing across the country, is they're telling student athletes when they come onto campus and when they're being recruited, hey, we can't tell you what you're going to make here, but we can tell you what you likely would make. We can give you an idea of what other players in a similar position to you are making. So, it's kind of a way of offering money without offering money, because they cannot technically say we'll give you this much to come here. That's pay for play.
Well, no, I guess my question, I think David was actually kind of alluding to it a little bit, was, I think you did a little bit yourself. I don't know if I know there's like a status, I suppose, that goes, playing for Iowa, that there's prestige. Obviously, a person recruited to Iowa, they don't have to question whether it's a good place to go. It's, I'm sure it's a good place regardless, but I'm just curious, by committing to Iowa, then is there, maybe an incentive maybe that goes along with being recruited there, maybe than to being recruited like maybe at Northwestern, or is it a push maybe to where it doesn't really? That's what I don't understand, I guess.
Well, I said, it depends on the support you have from donors and what kind of collective has been established. Has there been a donor? Has there been somebody or alumnus who has formed a collective and is actually making an effort to raise the money, because the school cannot. So with Iowa, Brad Heinrichs is a former Iowa scholarship golfer, and he stepped up to the plate and organized this collective. I've heard that there are other schools that are behind where Iowa is. Iowa's probably behind other schools. Like, it's an arms race. So I don't know what you talking about Northwestern. I don't know what Northwestern has.
Oh, no. I was just throwing a name out there. I wasn't necessarily
here's the other thing you got to realize too. There are the formal collectives out there, but there's nothing stopping a private donor from offering a player money. He can do what he wants. That's the very substance of what the Supreme Court ruled on, is these players can make money based on who they are if they want to make it. It's just the school can't pay them technically. So it's a technicality, it's loopholes, and that's why we got where we are.
Well, are they, and again, I'm not real up to date on it, I guess, but is that what's driving where they are recruited to, though? Is that why, like, Adrian Martinez, is that why he left, or was it?
I don't know. Adrian Martinez left. There's speculation that it's because his girlfriend was at Kansas State, but I think it depends on the specific athlete. Yes, Chris, there is a lot of recruiting that's based on NIL and money, and a lot of the transfer portal cycle and players entering the portal and then basically not desiring to be contacted by anybody formally is an indication that they've been contacted through the grapevine by somebody else who's offered them money. Okay. But there are also athletes out there, I know from personal experiences, or I should say personal conversations with Iowa athletes, whether we're talking about basketball or football, not everybody's collecting 6-7 figures. They're just not. So it depends on what level we're talking about. We brought up Dylan Raiola. I have a hard time imagining that his recruitment isn't something heavy to do with what he can make once he gets there. I just have a hard time imagining that for a guy his recruiting level, I should say.
Well, like, for example, Bo Nix, he left, I don't know, has he already used up all his eligibility? I know he transferred to Oregon, but
I don't even know. Is he done there? I don't know.
I don't either.
And he's a good example. Maybe he got an offer from Oregon. He was playing at Auburn. I thought he was pretty good down there. I don't know. But like guy like Michael Penix, here's a good example. Here, let's look at 2 Pac-12 examples, Chris, that are totally, I think, opposite. Without asking those players and getting an honest answer, we can't say for certain. I could see how Bo Nix, Don Patterson, who I have on my show, knows Bo Nix's family. I wouldn't be surprised if Bo Nix was offered some money to go to Oregon, but at the same time, I would be surprised if Michael Penix was offered a lot of money to go to Washington. Penix's career had been derailed due to injury, and I perceive that move to Washington to be a desire for a fresh start. So I think there are examples each way. What percentage of student athletes in the transfer portal are being recruited with an eye to NIL? I can't answer that. Is it 50%? Is it 75%? Is it 30%? I don't know. But there are plenty that NIL is a big part of the criteria. I'm confident in that.
Wasn't Penix, he was at Indiana, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and he did pretty well there, didn't he?
Well, he did in 2020 during the COVID year, and then 2021 was a train wreck, and he got hurt again, and the team was 2-10.
Oh, I see.
So, there's team success, I'm sure. A lot of student athletes would say team success is important. Development for the pros is important, but I think it just depends on, I just think there's certain levels of recruits where the criteria is different.
Well, I'm just trying to get my finger on what's actually going on, because it's like I've noticed I never really noticed that there were any, except for like maybe when Russell Wilson left, was it Wisconsin or North Carolina State for Wisconsin? Mm-hmm. He had an extra year though. I don't think he could use it I think he had to transfer, but other than that, I haven't noticed that happening as much as it does now. And I just wondered what the motivation for it was. Is it that they're getting more money? Is it just that they have more opportunity to play? Do you have any idea about that?
I think it's both. I think it just depends on the circumstance. But
It's not.
and there are certain situations. The rule as to why Russell, I don't even know what you're talking about. But if Russell Wilson had to leave North Carolina State and play somewhere else to be able to play another year in college, that may be. And that was
he had a year of eligibility. He decided to use it at Wisconsin, is I think what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like a graduate thing, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa basketball had a kid come in from North Dakota who ended up being a really good 5, Philip Obracha, and he's not going to play. He's not going to play pro basketball in the U.S., at least not in the NBA. But he's going to go play pro somewhere else. He didn't come here because of NIL. I mean, he just didn't. He's not. Guys like that are not that marketable. It just depends on how marketable a guy is. And that's the other part of NIL is you have marketability, and then you also have, just how much you have from a donor and collective standpoint. There's lots of different offshoots to that vine, if you will.
Will that eventually lead to because I'm kind of curious about how it's kind of trending. I mean, like I said, I don't know exactly in fact, I have no idea where the money's coming from, but I would think over time that would kind of tend to level a little bit to where there might not be as much incentive to transfer. Is that probably a fair assumption or no?
What wouldn't cause it? What would even the
Well, I just mean, you say there's private money or whatever. I don't know how that works exactly, but if let's just say one team has more people that are able to contribute, isn't that over time? I mean, I don't know, how is that going to work? It's to where they can bring in but I think over time maybe that might just kind of taper off to where it's not necessarily such a big advantage, maybe. Or is that always going to be an incentive? Is that always going to be an incentive to keep somebody from transferring from like a Ohio State? Maybe,
a big part of I know Iowa's collective is trying to retain the players it has. So you're right on that. But in my mind, I look at it more so from a vantage point of the rich will keep getting richer because the schools that have a lot of support and a lot of donor money and whatever else, those schools are going to continue to be able to pull the best players from other schools that simply just don't have those assets. So
is that what's driving realignment then? Maybe is to try to pull them all together a little bit. Do you think?
Driving realignment.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I guess I haven't given that thought. You're talking relating to NIL?
Well, I just mean in terms of the media rights, where you get certain programs, I guess, that want to, combine their assets together in a way that makes it to where they get a better a deal, maybe for what they get.
Well, again, technically, the money the school gets doesn't have any impact on what the donors can offer students.
But I mean, in terms of what they make on the networks, that isn't driven by maybe some of this isn't having something to do with that. You don't think?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Because I mean, when they pull their resources together, it seems like there's a little bit. I would think that would tend to make it to where they could bring in better players. You don't think that would happen that way?
If you're going by the rule books, they can't. That's money that's going to the schools. But that's not the money that can be offered to players. I mean, they can build facilities and they can do those types of things, but they can't offer that money to students directly under the current. What
exactly are they being paid for then?
They're supposed to be. First of all, they're being paid by private people.
They're
not being paid by the by the university. That's the first part.
Okay.
And the second part is they're supposed to be providing some sort of a service, whether it be their name on the back of a shirt or autographs, or they're doing some service at a hospital or whatever. They're working in an ice cream shop for a day, whatever. That's the gist of this. But again, that's assuming everybody plays by the rules, and they don't.
Well, I wouldn't think that anybody could cheat.
Right? Yeah, that never happens.
Well, I know, but I mean, in terms of if they're monitoring or if there's somebody that's like overseeing I wouldn't think that they could get by, without being
nobody's overseeing it.
Oh,
nobody's overseeing this. That's why we were having that conversation about the NCAA. Nobody's overseeing this.
I already asked Mark this question. I don't know if you have any other information to offer me, I guess, but I suggested that the Pac-12 and Big Ten combine. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that wouldn't be a good thing? That they kind of merge together and combine their assets together? Bad thing.
I don't think that's a good thing. Why would that be a good thing?
More media, more.
I think the Big Ten's already gotten the best that the Pac-12 has to offer. If anything, you add more schools, and you're just cutting down on revenue for each school would be my guess. I don't know. I don't have the numbers. I can't crunch the numbers without knowing what else would that do for TV right?
Package, you know what I mean? It's like for packaging it and like selling it. I would think if you have more schools involved, that's, you know, more people interested. That's more. I think it's a plus sort of thing. You know, you have more people watching, more people interested, more. What do you call it? More
exposure.
Yeah. More coverage. More. I would think.
I don't know that. Like I said, the numbers would have to be right because if you increase your TV revenue by X amount, you're also having to distribute it.
Sure.
To a lot more schools.
I wasn't leaving that out. I was just curious because I thought there was talks that they were looking to. I heard that it was Washington maybe or Oregon, or that there were other schools that they were interested in bringing in. So I was just thinking, rather than like making it exclusive to like 2 or 3, why not just invite all the schools that are already there? I mean, to me, I think that's a better deal for everybody, is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You don't agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it at all, so I'll have to give that some thought.
Well, no, I was just throwing it out there to see what you had to say about it.
Yeah, I'll have to give that some thought.
All right, that's all. Thanks. I was going to call you Mark. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, appreciate Chris being here and being a part of the show. Hair Trigger says nothing has been snagged until they're on campus and have that letter signed, and even then, these days, that doesn't mean much. My understanding is what the word on the street was about Caden Proctor, the 5-star tackle from Des Moines, when he committed to Iowa. He signed a deal with a Dodge Jeep Ram dealership and had a new Jeep. And what the word on the street is, I haven't asked anybody in his camp about this because it's none of my business, I guess. I don't really care. Is that when he decommitted and went to Alabama, he had to give the truck back. So, you know, the fine print on these things, I don't know. I'm not looking at NIL contracts, private party contracts, but there's got to be some way that you can ensure. Because technically, again, they're not paying them to go to Iowa, technically. But again, we're talking legal issues, and we're talking about the NCAA that's not regulating this because not that they don't want to, but at this point, I don't know that they do because it's out of their. They milked that cow dry. Milked that cow bone dry, and eventually the Supreme Court said, "Hey, it's over. You're done." And that's why, you know, I saw somebody earlier criticizing my opinion on the NCAA going away. Well, who's going to govern it? Well, that's what I'm saying. We're talking about a whole new restructuring. How that looks, what that looks like, I don't know. But I'm just saying the NCAA has proven to be negligent and inadequate as it relates to this issue. And boy, it's ruling the roost right now. All right, I think we've got Brian on the line. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, man?
Brian.
Hey, man, who your two picks to come out of? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's a bit of a delay. Cool. I apologize.
Nah, you good, man. Who's your 2 picks to come out of the East and West?
2 picks to come out of the East and West. I mean, Iowa's got a shot. You know, this is the year where they better do it this year because with divisions going away and with the changes at Wisconsin and Nebraska, I think it's just going to be tougher and tougher. I would probably go at this point. I would probably go with Iowa and probably Ohio State. Would not be shocked if it's Michigan. I'm not
Ohio
trying to
State,
insult you.
man.
I'm not trying to insult them. Are you a Michigan fan?
Yeah, man. I had Iowa coming out. I had Iowa coming out the West. I think Ohio State's year is next year, to be honest with you. This Michigan team returns more production than pretty much anyone in the country. It's pretty much the same roster as last year, except deeper now because they returned everybody. They added depth from the transfer portal. J.J. McCarthy's going to be an even more seasoned quarterback. The defense returns 8 of their 11 starters. The offense returns both running backs, and the running back room is going to be even deeper. Like I said, because you know they added depth. I don't see Ohio State. I would go Penn State. I think Penn State is actually. I would pick them over Ohio State this year. As the second best team.
I have a hard time. First of all, very impressed with Penn State against Utah in the Rose Bowl, but question marks at quarterback. I know that they've done pretty good in the recruiting trail, as has Ohio State, to replace Stroud. But I do question because Penn State has been much more. They have a smaller sample size. I mean, look at it's been Sean Clifford and Trace McSorley for how many years? So I've got some question marks there. Yeah, Michigan's going to be really good. I'm not disputing that. I don't think there was this big gap that maybe some people think there was between Michigan and Ohio State this past year. Matchup wise, we've seen these last 2 years, Michigan has found a way in that game, and they seem to have Ohio State's number. I get that. What Ohio State gives you at quarterback year in and year out, it's just hard to doubt them, even with the loss of Stroud. So we'll see. I wasn't real impressed with J.J. McCarthy at the end of the year. Were you impressed with him in the playoff?
I thought he had a terrible first half. No doubt he made two boneheaded. He had the boneheaded pick six, obviously, and the boneheaded pick six in the second half.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we're looking at his.
Real quick, didn't he almost throw a first half? Didn't he almost throw a pick six right before he threw a pick six? Am I remembering that correctly?
Trying to remember, man. I mean, I've watched the game a couple times. It's been a little bit. He had a bad first half period. I mean, the second half is when he found his. I mean, he put up. Yep. I mean, he had a great second half. But the way I look at it is, J.J. McCarthy missed summer camp, he missed spring camp, in the fall camp he split reps with goddamn it, Cade, and he didn't get a full summer and a full amount of reps to really gel with the offense, and he still was as good as he was. So I look at it as this is going to be a sophomore year. He's going to have pretty much the same pieces around him, minus a couple guys. I'm looking at that sophomore jump, and I'm just looking at this team being one of those teams that they've been together for a couple years now. I don't see how you can't have them as the favorite. Especially, I get the Ohio State point. I understand that point. And I say with Ohio State, I got to see the quarterback still. I understand the reputation, I do. But I still got to see those. If they show that they could be what they were through the first 5 games, then I might adjust my opinion. But I still got to see it because there's reports about their O-line too right now. I know it's just spring, but they got to replace 3 out of 5 O-line, and the reports are their O-line's getting whipped in practice.
And their defense wasn't very good. I mean, their defense was better. I mean, don't get me wrong; it was a lot better than was 2021. But their defense is not great. So no, I would not be shocked at all if Michigan wins again. And frankly, it'll come. I have no doubt it will come down to that game. Now, Penn State can figure out the quarterback position. Maybe they stop playing third fiddle and they actually compete for a division. Again, they were as impressive as anybody in postseason play. I mean, frankly, Michigan and Ohio State both struggled defensively in the playoffs. So I would say Ohio State and Michigan for me are 1A and 1B. You're putting me on the spot, but I would
no doubt.
Either one of those guys, either one of those teams is a fine pick at this point.
So I guess the reason I'm higher on Penn State, and I'm usually not, by the way. The reason this year I am is because that defense to me, I think is going to be really good. I think it's going to be better than Ohio. At this point with Ohio State and Ryan Day, he's got to show me. He's got that Big 12 effect to me right now when it comes to defense. I got to see him put a good defense on the field. It's kind of with the quarterback, right? We have faith he could put a good quarterback on there, right? Well, it's the opposite with the defense. I got to see him put a good defense on the field before, I have any faith in him putting a good defense on the field. With Penn State, I feel like they're going to have one of the better defenses in the country. And yes, the quarterback room is a question, but they also have one of the better running back duos next year. And if they can get their O-line, to be up to par, really the only weak position is I guess receiver and quarterback really on that team. So that's why people are so high on them.
The only reason I'm pausing, and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you to an extent. Ohio State was 14th in the country in total defense.
They were.
It's not like I mean, I guess I'm looking at this from the lens of an Iowa fan who has watched an Iowa offense be 130th in the country in offense. So when I look at this, that's a bad unit. Well, 14th in the country is pretty darn good. You're right. There's a gap, I think. I don't know where that gap starts. If it's after Michigan's, you have Iowa, Illinois, Ohio State, Iowa State, Michigan. I'm looking at Power 5 teams, a lot of Big Ten teams. Georgia obviously is a top 10. Wisconsin's always there, but Ohio State's not far behind. I wouldn't be shocked if they made a big jump defensively this year.
So Ohio State gives me, so when I say Big 12, the reason I say that is because they'll have stretches where they play teams where the defense looks good, but when they go up against any team with a pulse on offense, they get exposed. And you saw that last year. I mean, Penn State exposed them, Michigan exposed them, Georgia exposed them.
Yeah.
I mean, teams that could actually, and the Big Ten last year, if we're being honest, was not a good Big Ten last year overall on both ends. So, yeah, I just got to see him put a consistently good defense on the field before I put any faith in that. And to combine that with the fact that they do have to replace their quarterback and they do have to replace 3 or 5 O-line, I don't know how you can't give Michigan the edge there just based off the past 2 years, just based off who they're returning, and just based off what Ohio State has going on.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and I'll be fascinated if it's Iowa and Michigan. I would like it to be Iowa, Michigan, because I don't know anybody that wouldn't like to see the Cade versus JJ matchup.
That'd be crazy, right?
I'm not one, and I'm not one, man. I'm not one to read into Cade McNamara being at Iowa to assume that that's going to be this huge, create this huge jump. Iowa's got a ton of question marks on the offensive line. They've got question marks, still a big question marks at receiver. They've been banged up this spring. Their run game has not been consistent. Part of that's the O-line play. So, I don't know. They lost a really productive tight end, although they add Eric All out of Michigan. I would just love to see that matchup because there'd be a lot of storylines that people would flock to. And I'm sure.
Well, I'll say this, man. I think you guys got a good quarterback. I think man. I think he fits what you guys try to do. Actually, I think he's perfect for what you guys try to do in Iowa. He's a perfect, pro style, stand in the pocket, can deliver a pass, something you guys have, been missing the past few years. So I think you guys got to go. We'll see what Brian does with it, of course.
You're not talking about.
We'll see if you can make some work out of it. We'll see, man. Brian Ferentz.
Brian, okay, you're not talking about yourself. You're talking about Brian Ferentz.
No, I was talking about the offensive coordinator. Yeah. Speaking of which, so do you think? Let's say they get Cade. Let's say they. I don't think so. I think Cade's gonna make it work. But let's just say, for sake of argument, that it falls apart again this year. They got to get rid of him, right? At that point,
I said that last year, Brian.
I mean, at some point,
at some point, sure. At some point, they have this phony contract in place. You probably maybe you've heard about the stipulations of this contract where, Brian, they have to win. The team has to win 7 games. The team has to average 25 points per game, which is a ridiculously low mark. So I guess if you look at that, it would tell you that if they don't somehow make both of those, that he'll be gone. But at the same time, like they could average 26 points per game and win in 8 games with one hand tied behind their back. The schedule's weak, and the division is looking to be down with changes at Nebraska and at Wisconsin and at Purdue, and you could argue at Illinois, given their D coordinator leaving. So I think it's ridiculous, and he should have been let go last year. We've talked about that at length. I think if they somehow are still, I can't imagine them. I think you're right. Cade McNamara makes them a lot better. That doesn't mean they're going to be really good, but they're a lot better than 130th in the country. Will that be top 100, top 90, top 80? Probably somewhere in there. If they were somehow still outside the top 100, I agree with you. I don't know how in the world you could retain the guy, but I've said that before. And the amount of power that Kirk Ferentz has in this program never fails to amaze me.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, man. I'm going to let you know right now, man. My national title pick, don't be shocked. My national title pick, Michigan.
Michigan, national title?
Yeah, they're going to win it, man. I'm telling you. This is their best chance. I think after this, it'll be tough. I think this is their best chance to do it. Jim Harbaugh's on the record, during spring saying this is the best team I've had. There's just the confidence there, man. That I think if he's ever going to pull it off, it's this year. I think after this year, it's going to be tough. But yeah.
So who you got in the playoff?
I got Michigan, Georgia's schedule is so easy. I don't know how they don't make the playoff. I can see Georgia and Alabama in the playoff just because Georgia's schedule is so easy. And then Bama, I'm not going to doubt Nick Saban. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just not going to doubt him. So right now, I'll probably have 2 SEC teams in there. And then I'll probably put
Michigan.
USC. So USC, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama.
No,
that's my playoff.
You're not going out on a limb. I would not be shocked at all. I mean, I don't know that it'd be great for the sport. I don't see. I know it'd be great for Michigan fans. I don't see TCU, being a playoff contender. I will be shocked if they're in playoff consideration by weeks 11 or 12. I've said that to Mark several times.
And US,
they're one of.
Yeah, and unless USC runs into Utah again like that, I mean, I just see USC getting in there. And then, like I said, have you seen Georgia's schedule? It's just as easy as Michigan. So Michigan and Georgia got the 2 easiest overall schedules, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'd have to educate me on Georgia's quarterback situation.
So that's the other reason I'm so high on Michigan. Michigan, out of all the top teams, is really the only team that returns their guy. So Georgia, everyone else is unproven. And don't get me wrong, JJ is still unproven too, to an extent, but at least he's proven something.
Oh, I think you. I don't think Mark and I have had conversations about this too. I don't think there's some huge gap between what JJ gave them and what Cade gives them. Maybe there's more upside with JJ. That's fine, but you at least know what you have there and potential for upside. I don't know what you have at Penn State.
Well, I like Cade. Don't get me wrong, but the difference between JJ and Cade is, for example, like Cade in the Georgia playoff game. In a situation like that, he's not a playmaker. He's more of he's a pocket QB. He's not really a guy that, can go wild, and if the game plan falls apart, can create. JJ is that guy.
Yeah.
JJ can do everything a pocket passer can do, and then some. He can make plays. He can run the ball. He can run the ball like a dual threat. He can do all those things. And like I said, that was his first year. He didn't have summer practice. He didn't practice in the spring, and he split reps in the fall. And he still was as good as he was that first year. So I'm excited to see him this sophomore year. Even Cade in 2021 had way more under his belt from 2020 and all the reps he had got by the time he started in 2021. So I do think Cade's a great quarterback. I do think there's a gap, though. So, I do think Cade's a great quarterback, especially if you put him in the right system.
Well, he's not a great okay, but see, there's why I would disagree with you. He can't be a great quarterback if he's system dependent. I really do believe that. I don't think he's a great quarterback if he needs everything around him working.
Okay, I guess I'll rephrase it. He's great dependent on the system. If it's not the right system, then he can't be great. I think as excited as I am to add a guy who's proven and took that team to a Big Ten championship and went to the playoff, I am hesitant as an Iowa guy to buy in because I see some of the same issues up front and at wide receiver. Until they prove otherwise, I still see those hampering the upside. I mean, it's going to help. It's going to help having Cade. That's why I think they're going to be a top 100 offense. But to act like he's just the savior, come in here and make this offense great, I don't buy into that. I mean, that's true. It really is dependent on you guys' O-line. So if you get that fixed, I think he could definitely. You guys could get to the championship game, the Big Ten championship game with him. I don't really have any doubts about that.
Have you seen the schedule? You want to talk about week schedules? Have you seen the schedule?
I haven't seen you guys' schedule. I just know you in the West, so that's why I usually say that.
You're in the West, but this past year, Iowa at least had Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule. This next year, they get. Pull up the schedule. They get Penn State, and let's see, they don't get. What am I looking at here? 2023. They have Penn State in the schedule. They do not have Ohio State, and they do not have Michigan. Their 3 crossovers are. Yeah,
they'll be in there for sure. Then
their 3 crossovers are at Penn State, home against Michigan State, and home against Rutgers.
Because you guys play the best defense in the West typically, and I just don't see you guys not getting in there. But I'm gonna get going, man. Like I said, Michigan, they're gonna get that natty. We're gonna beat Ohio State again. Not really worried about that for the first time in a long time, which is weird for me, to be honest. But yeah,
best wishes, and I hope for a Big Ten matchup of Iowa and Michigan.
I think it's gonna happen, man. All right, man. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate Brian calling in. Lomansky's here on our live chat. Prime should be able to bring Florida guys to Boulder. Prime should be able to bring guys from anywhere, Lomansky. But I agree with you on that. Erica says Iowa is going to grate Nebraska. She makes a correction. Iowa will beat Nebraska. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. But let's remember, Erica, Iowa is coming off a loss to Nebraska, and they even in the recent wins in the series, they have been very close games, and most of them have been very close games. And it's a rivalry for a reason, not just because the media and it was kind of a self-made rivalry, but it's been a very competitive one, even though it's been lopsided with wins and losses, if that makes sense. So would not be shocked if Nebraska were to win. It is in Kinnick this year, right? Looking at this correctly. No, it's at Lincoln. Man, did Iowa lose that game? And I'm losing my mind. Iowa lost that game last year in Kinnick. Man, I forgot that. Iowa lost that game in Kinnick, folks. That was a game where Iowa wins. You're in the Big Ten championship game. They lost to Nebraska in Kinnick. Ridiculous. Pathetic. Okay. Why don't we don't have anybody here right now. If you want to join the show, I'll go ahead and throw up I've been filtering it on here every once in a while. I'll go ahead and throw the link up if you want to join the show and create some conversation here regarding the Big Ten, your favorite school, or maybe your least favorite school. The link is in the live chat. I want to go ahead and share my screen for those who are interested. Brian brought up the Iowa schedule. This is what I'm talking about. When I talk about Iowa's schedule and the week schedule, the week crossover games, I mean, Utah State, first of all, we're talking about non-conference. Utah State should be a win. Iowa State was 3-9? Were they 3-9 last year? 4-8, somewhere in there. It's at Jack Trice. It will be a difficult game. I'm expecting Iowa State to be better, but again, that's a bad football team, or at least it was last year. It's a game Iowa should, knock on wood, should win. Western Michigan lost a lot to the transfer portal. Iowa should be 3-0 heading into that game at Penn State. Assuming you lose to the Nittany Lions, although it's going to be Penn State's, I think, second Big Ten game. So for a new quarterback, you never know. But I would expect Iowa to lose that game. Michigan State at Kinnick. Who knows? Again, Michigan State's hard to predict. I would probably take Iowa in that one. At Kinnick Stadium, I would take Iowa against Purdue. At Wisconsin, who knows what Luke Fickell's going to have rolling there at that point. Even if you take Wisconsin, that's just, what do I have? 2 losses to that point. I would take Iowa over Minnesota at home. I would take Iowa over Northwestern at Wrigley Field. I'd take Iowa over Rutgers. I'd take Iowa over Illinois. And I'd probably take Iowa over Nebraska. Wouldn't be shocked to see them lose. But even if we said they were going to lose to Nebraska, that's 9-3. That's what I'm talking about, folks. Like, you want to know why Kirk Ferentz didn't make a change with Brian? I think part of it is he realizes, hey, we're going to get to 9-3, 10-2. And we're going to put some ridiculous mark to aspire to hit 7 wins in the contract of Brian Ferentz, which is a joke. Can you imagine Iowa winning that? By the way, that's 7 wins with a bowl game. So imagine what they'd have to do to, I don't know, lose 6 games. Like, who would they lose to? Who would the 6 losses be to? Okay, at Penn State, let's say at Iowa State, that's 2. At Wisconsin's 3. I suppose they could lose to Michigan State. That's 4. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to lose 2 of these games. Northwestern, who was terrible. Rutgers at home. Illinois at home. Illinois is good, but don't get me wrong. They were good last year. Have to prove it this year, and they lost their D coordinator in the games in Iowa City. I don't know, man. It's just it's such a divide with scheduling. And I know our last caller brought up Michigan's schedule. I don't really know what their schedule looks like. I guess we could pull that up as well. We've already looked at Nebraska's, and we have looked at Iowa. But bottom line is, it's going to be hard for Iowa to lose any more than 3 or 4 games. Pat says, I agree with you, Corey, regarding NIL. What do you know about how Nebraska, Illinois, and Wisconsin are doing with spring ball and recruits? I know as much as you do, Pat. I've been kind of disconnected from spring ball around the conference. All I can tell you is it sounds like the focus at Nebraska has been the Dylan Raiola recruitment. That's what I keep being told. I listened to Mark's show with Greg Peterson here a couple of weeks ago, and not that there's not development going along the offensive line. They've got a bunch of quarterbacks that have to they got to figure out who's going to stay there. I would guess some of them enter the portal. At least a couple of them enter the portal, I would think, here in a week or two. Have not heard as much about Illinois. Wisconsin's bringing in a lot of new people, obviously not just coaching staff, but also with the transfer portal. It's going to look different with Luke Fickell. It's going to look a lot different with Luke Fickell, but I've said it ever since those hires were announced, Pat. I would not be shocked if Nebraska and Wisconsin get it done in year one. Now, does that mean they're going to win the conference or win the division? No. Would I be shocked if Wisconsin won the division? No. Their schedule, I mean, we can pull up their schedule, I guess. I won't throw it up on the screen, but Wisconsin's, they've got in the conference, they're at Purdue, home against Rutgers, home Iowa, at Illinois, Ohio State at home, at Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, schedule-wise, they got a tougher schedule than Iowa does. And we talked about Nebraska's schedule. Illinois' schedule, again, I don't know what to make of the Fighting Illini. They do get Penn State. They have to play, at Minnesota, home against Wisconsin, at Maryland. Yeah, I mean, I guess Illinois, if they can, if they look anything close to what they looked like last year with that schedule, which is semi-favorable, again, they avoid Michigan, they avoid Ohio State, just like Iowa. Yeah, they have a shot. But that conversation, I haven't even had thought about the West and the East really yet. Been focused on spring ball, been focused on college basketball, and now we're about to turn the corner. All right, I am kind of behind the chat, folks. I apologize. If you want to call in, we've got time for at least another caller here. We got another half hour or so. Leave your questions and your comments in the chat if you want to spark some discussion. I don't know if people are going after each other here or what's going on, but way behind on the chat here. So Stubby says, Michigan fans are so adorable. Way to lose to TCU. I'm assuming this is maybe an Ohio State fan with the sumo wrestling picture. Not that that's the reason why I think you're an Ohio State fan, but Lemansky's here. Lemansky, give us a call, Lemansky. Where are you at? Big Ten West is up for grabs. One of the new coaches like Fickell could win a lot. I guess Lemansky usually calls into the phone line, which we don't have open. We have the StreamYard link if you want to call. Jason's here, one of the premium subscribers here at the Voice of College Football. Go Noles. Thank you for being here, Jason, and for being a premium subscriber. Z Paul, so look out for Ryan Walters. I hear he's turning heads. Man, wouldn't that be a storyline if he goes to Purdue and gets it done quickly? Maybe I'm counting him out. I think a lot of people are. Wouldn't that be something if he goes there and gets it done? We haven't seen a lot of coaches get it done, and it looks like, from my perspective, Braum got it done to an extent. But was there a ceiling on that program? I guess it's going to be hard for any team to win the conference as long as Michigan and Ohio State are rolling, and Penn State for that matter. But it'll be interesting to see what Walters does there, and like I said, how Illinois responds without him. Rowan says, I think Florida State and Clemson would fit in the SEC. We've already got too many teams. Never say never on realignment. Lemansky, Aaron Graves on that Iowa D-line will be 2023 first team All Big Ten. That's a big jump, Lemansky. Didn't play a lot last year, but you know how I feel about Aaron Graves. I think he's going to be phenomenal. He is unlike any other athlete I've seen, at least in recent memory. I know people have compared him to A.J. Epinesa. Frankly, out of high school, he looks the part more than A.J. did. A.J. probably had longer arms. That'd be my one criticism of Aaron Graves. I've never measured his arms or his wingspan, but it looks like maybe he's a bit short. That's why I wonder if he ends up playing on the interior throughout his career. But man, he's a freak athletically and a weight room junkie. And they do lose some pieces up front, although they bring several guys back. But Lucas Van Ness leaving opens the door for Aaron Graves. There's no question about it. And Van Ness, probable first round pick. I'll be interested to see if Aaron Graves can make that jump. All right, let's go to our next caller. Alex is on the line. Alex, welcome.
Hey, how are you? So, in usual blue-colored glasses, the last Michigan caller, went on about how Ohio State. I went to Ohio State. Went on about how. So I just biked literally 5 miles to get on to talk to you.
Oh, wow.
Like
well, how about that?
Super. Let me catch my breath. Okay, so I have two things to say about us. One, and it sounds like an excuse, and I'm sure it'll be like that to Wolverine fans, but we were completely asleep at the wheel last year for the last half of the season. And I mean asleep. And I think anyone in the country could have seen, like, isn't this the great Ohio State? I don't think people were thinking, wow, they're untalented. I think people probably thought, do they care? Because we were like, I would use an analogy, on heroin. We were literally, if I'm coming in and out, I'm sorry. I should probably move my seat there. I can see my face kind of doing weird things. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Your video's a little glitchy. I can hear you just fine.
Right. So, I mean, basically, yeah, we were asleep at the wheel completely. I think any loyal, honest Ohio State fan, which I'm not that rose colored. I can see reality. So blame whomever, Ohio State, Michigan fan, blame whomever you want in Ohio State for definitely asleep. We were kind of there in the first half, but we were asleep. I mean, we had no all this fight that Dave talks about. Second statement, this year, we're a totally different team. And people can say, what do you mean totally different? The running back room. First of all, I don't think they're going to rely on Trev and Mayan anymore. I think they've kind of realized that we have consistent stuff going on with them. And we found Dallin and Chip. And Dallin and Chip are phenomenal running backs. And if people have, just go watch our practice videos and watch them go against, what, okay, would be another conversation. I really feel something happened to the front seven, and I think there's a fire lit in all the players. And forget it. Our defense this year, mark my words, front seven, secondary may be a question, but front seven, forget it. We're easily with Michigan. And I don't think anyone's Iowa. I think you need decades but we're really good front seven. And what was I going to say? Forgot why I brought up the defense.
Real quick, Alex. Real quick. Move back where you were before, because your audio is coming in clearer where you were before.
That's funny.
Genius. So I was just going to say real quick. So you talk about Ohio State behind the wheel, sleeping behind the wheel, end of last season. Isn't that a concern though? Like, why?
Okay. Well, I think more than a concern. Like, I think the question could be answered with, I think we were the great big Ohio State University, and every single person, player and coach, was kind of like, yeah, that's right. No one can hurt us. I mean, we've all played those games when we were younger, just kind of like, yeah, we're the best. And then suddenly, we're not, because we weren't playing. Ohio State was told they were the best team on the planet in the beginning of last year. And there's not even a question about that. They were being told that nonstop. And Day's got his millions of dollars and it went to his head. It just all kind of hit everyone. And I think the real sign of maybe the team, but definitely of Day, was the Georgia game. Dude, we came alive. Now, is that the best game I've seen Ohio State play? Urban Meyer. I mean, his games were on fire. So no, but pretty darn close to Urban. Absolutely. He was on fire with the coach.
You're talking about offense.
Offense, and I would even say minus the fourth quarter. Yes. Okay. Listen, our defense had issues all year last year. I would just say, as a total experience, the team as a total during the game with Georgia was we were at least on. The team was on, and we were playing really good. And I want to drop this. I dropped this in the chat. I want to say this openly to everyone on the planet who watches Georgia. The reason why Georgia wins is not talent. It's not gusto. It's not power. It's that they run their tuchuses off, their butts off. I'm from New York. They run their butts off and practice. like maniacs in practice. They don't run a few sprints, a few miles. They literally run for 6 hours straight every day, all week, all month, all year. And they will outgas you in every single game. It is their running in practice that makes Georgia what they are. And Kirby's watching this right now. He's going, damn, who is this guy? I'm telling you, trust me. They're not talented. They know how to go forward and go forward and go forward and forward and not quit because they have lungs. They have gas. Trust me. If you played any kind of sports, it's gas. And that's how they're winning. So honestly, if Georgia didn't have the whole gas thing, I mean, and we played the way we did in that game against any other team, Alabama, even Michigan, I'm sorry. That team that we were in the Georgia game, I think absolutely would have beaten at least by 5 or 10 points Michigan.
Well, just remember,
yes,
they gave up 42.
They gave up 40 points to a team that is so well trained. I mean, that's my excuse for Georgia. That Georgia's not really that good of a team. They're just so athletically prepared. And someone from Georgia said that to me recently too. He was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Our training is through the roof." So that's how I think we look so
40,
bad.
But they gave up 4. Like I get what you. They gave up 42 to Georgia. Gave up 45 to Michigan. So against the 2 other playoff teams that they faced, they gave up about 90 points combined.
That's fine. So what if we played Toledo? What if we played less than Georgia? It probably wouldn't be 40 points. You know, I'm telling you that. Okay, so let's say the defense was not the greatest it could be during that game, and the offense was better. As a whole, the team was playing much better, is what I'm saying. And the leader, Ryan, I think, was the reason why.
Yeah, well, like you said, I would be concerned. I'm not. Listen, you heard me say earlier, I would not be surprised to see Ohio State win this division. But at the same time, I just am saying I think there's reason to be concerned if you're saying a team that was undefeated fell asleep behind the wheel. I just can't imagine. I can't fathom that. And by the way, they didn't look that good against Notre Dame. They did not look that good.
Well, okay, I respect that you can't, but I would just utilize any example of someone being told they're so amazing and believing it too much. You know.
Okay, but I'm just saying, who is telling they did not look that good against Notre Dame week 1.
No. I'm saying at the start of the year. I mean, we went into that year being told by the whole planet we were the best team in the country. Not even a question. Best receivers, this great coach, yada yada. I mean, trust me, our heads were, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they were. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to look at it through a lens of a fan base that I've never been able to experience. I've never been able to experience what Ohio State fans. I'm an Iowa guy, so like I'm looking at your schedule and I'm seeing Ohio State, destroying teams 77-21, 52-21. I saw them beat Iowa 54-10, and I'm thinking, well, if that's sleepwalking,
no. I'm saying at the end of the season, at the beginning of the season, we weren't like totally the way.
Saying,
I think
David,
we could have been.
Or Alex, sorry, I called you David, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Alex is okay. If they were sleepwalking if they were being told how great they were before the season. Well, they came out, didn't play great against Notre Dame, and then they were phenomenal for the next 10 games. What reason would they have to fall asleep at the end? I think that's a lame excuse.
I don't think we played that good against Notre Dame. I don't think we played that good against teams that a Pee Wee league almost could beat. I mean, Toledo and these teams, Akron. What are you talking about? These are high school teams. These are jokes.
Okay.
These aren't teams at all.
But Alex, take a look at the schedule. I mean, I understand it wasn't Murderers Row, but they beat Wisconsin before Paul Chryst was fired. They beat Wisconsin by 31. They beat an improved Rutgers team by 39, a Rutgers team who had been playing pretty good defense to that point. They put up 49.
Well, not to help you along. Why you asked the question? So why in the second half did we go to sleep? Because that's my opinion. My statement is we were sleeping for the last half of the season. That's my statement. And people can say that's. I mean, most I think old enough people who have enough clarity to just see life is what it is. We were sleeping. It's not that we're not talented. If anyone in this world were to say that Ohio State had anything less than the most talented receiving core in this country, would be a fool. Done.
I agree with that. I agree.
Our O-line last year was very good. Trev has issues. Mai has issues. So you could pick at our running backs. Our secondary had issues. So did our coaches. And the whole scheme thing ruined the whole front seven thing. That was really a very talented core and shown in various points, like, GTT when he blew out at Penn State, yada, yada. It's not that we don't have a talented team. We or didn't have a talented team, very talented team. Ryan Day is a very talented coach. The point is, why didn't it work? Well, then you have a few options come out of thin air with ideas that may not make sense or may make sense, or you could just look. And I looked and I saw, and these guys were like stumbling through games. Like, hello, like, snap, wake up. Like, this is, kill that guy. They weren't, that's my opinion. So, but aside from that, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I like I said, I can't really.
That's not even a point. So okay, we didn't play so well the second half of the season. Oh well. So, but the bigger thing is that we're a much different team this year, and I say it to Michigan, JJ, Donovan, Blake, and honestly, they played us sleeping. According to me, you have 3 players. Honestly, let's be honest. Even if you put was it not Loveland? The TE, what's his name, Loveland or whatever, the tight end, what's his name? I forget his name.
Schoonmaker?
Not Schoonmaker too. Schoonmaker and the other guy. The guy was actually better than Schoonmaker last year. The new guy, the freshman, I forget his name. Carson, whatever, Loveland, or doesn't matter. The point is, Michigan has very little talent, and they beat us because we were sleeping. And I'd say the first game that they beat us probably because we were sleeping on some level. I won't discuss the first game. You can go, anyone can talk about that. Last year's my opinion about sleeping. We were a totally different team this year, and Michigan is not an amazing team. Amazing teams are amazing teams like Ohio State 2014, maybe a Michigan team with what's his name, the late 90s with the defensive back, what's his name, that won the Heisman, and that kind of Michigan team back then. Like those are amazing teams. Ohio State has the making of an amazing team with a bunch of people that, according to me, are sleeping because they don't realize how amazing it is, and they're kind of lucky to have the team, and they're not waking up. The point is, Michigan this year can say they're absolutely going to decimate us. My only statement will be not that we're going to decimate them, but there's no way that that's a certainty that you're going to decimate us this year. It's not definitely Michigan's team. Go analyze our practice scrimmages. Yes, our O-line is ridiculous right now. It's the beginning of the season. Guarantee you this team is going to wake people up this year. That's my absolute promise. And I think Michigan fans better wake up because it's going to be probably a much different game than they think. And it sounds like Ohio State, stuff coming out of my mouth, but really, honestly, it's
well. All I will say, Alex, is I really did think Ohio State was going to win this past year. I thought they were going to play angry, and I don't know. The optics of this last year were different than this coming year. I'm way less confident in Ohio State this coming year than I was last year at this time. So, like, even though I will not be surprised, like I said earlier, I would probably take Ohio State. Maybe I'd take Michigan in the East right now, if you asked me. That game specifically, I was really confident this time last year that Ohio State was going to bounce back. And like I said, play mad. And I don't know. I wonder.
This is going to be a September to be watching this year. Without it, and I'm like you, where you said earlier about being, college versus NFL, 100%. This year for college football, where it concerns the Big Ten, I think other, conferences, no disrespect, but I don't really see what they have going on right now. The Big Ten this September is going to be explosive, and I cannot wait. And your team, by far, just to throw a compliment to you, even though you did not compliment Ohio State, but Iowa is definitely going to be the team of the West. There's not even a question. I think it's impossible for Wisconsin and Nebraska to come forward that quickly. No way. And Iowa's just got wow.
It is different now, though, Alex. It is different now. It is different now with the transfer portal, and sometimes those moves can be accelerated, and programs can be built a lot quicker. We saw it at Illinois. We saw it at Illinois last year. Bielema lost a lot.
This is all opinions. There isn't any fact. But I think this September is going to be the most exciting time in the Big Ten. Wow, this is going to be a big September. Mark my words. And this year is going to be amazing. And that's when we'll come back. We'll all come back. Corey, we'll all come back. And
okay.
Was your name Corey? Is that your name? Corey?
Yeah, that's my name.
Yeah. We'll all come back in the fall and be like, oh, right, interesting. It's going to be a very interesting year to trust me. So I will definitely see you in the fall for sure.
Okay, Alex. Appreciate your call, sir. Appreciate Alex calling in. The energy, and he says what did he jog 5 miles to get here, or rode his bike 5 miles to get here? The impressive stuff from Alex. So thank you. And I did pick Ohio State to win. Our earlier caller asked me what I'd take right now. Like I said, Ohio State 1A, Michigan 1B. Like I said, I thought I had a pretty good feel for the game last year, and all that went down the drain once we hit November. So appreciate the call, and we had another person on here, and it looks like they jumped off. John reminds us in the chat, please like the video, subscribe here to the Voice of College Football, and yes, close to 40,000, 40K. That'll be a great day for Mark Rogers and company when that happens. Let me just find here a couple of comments that I missed earlier in the chat. Stan says, suggestion for the host. I'm the host, apparently. It would be cool if the team reps for each channel in the Big Ten held a collective Zoom type of show, much like the Pac-12 and the SEC teams do. I think Mark talked about that, about wanting to do a Big Ten roundtable at some point. So, I'll pass that along to Mark if he's not watching, that Stan is hoping for a similar type of feature. Gregory, Hawkeyes have the same defense again. Well, they'll get a lot back. They do lose Riley Moss at corner. They lose 3 really good linebackers. Justin Jacobs didn't play a lot last year. He transfers to Oregon. Seth Benson declares for the league. Jack Campbell's on his way out. But I think they're going to play a lot of cash this year with Sebastian Castro. Certain packages and situations are going to have to play with 3 linebackers. We get that. So somebody's going to have to step up. Linebackers a question mark, but you have confidence in Phil Parker and Seth Wallace to figure that out. They're going to be loaded up front along that defensive line in spite of the loss of Lucas Van Ness. Cooper DeJean will be back, maybe the best corner in the league. And what am I missing? Safety, Xavier Wampa, former 4/5-star safety, looked good in the bowl game. Quinn Schulte will be back. As I mentioned, Castro will play some cash. And again, you hope the guys develop in the spring and in summer. I have no doubt, Greg, that it's going to be a really good defense again. I've got a lot of confidence in Phil Parker year in and year out. Dave says Iowa's the worst stadium I've been to as an old dude. Well, Dave, you probably hadn't been to too many stadiums then, because everybody else I talked to, Dave, says that Kinnick is one of the best experiences they've ever had in a college stadium. The pumped-in music is too loud. Again, don't know what you're talking about. I've been going to Iowa games my whole life, and don't know what you're talking about. Drinking is out of hand. Pretty sure drinking is out of hand at every college football event. They just recently started serving alcohol in the stadium, so we'll agree to disagree on that. Dr. C, Corey, if McNamara is successful, does this put a nail in the coffin in regards to needing a good OC head coach, proving football has become nothing more than a QB in an O-line league? Well, define success, Dr. C. If they're top 30 or 40 in offense, which they won't be, then yeah, it probably does. It changes things. But I mean, top 80, top 90 doesn't prove a darn thing about Brian Ferentz. I think that's just the Cade McNamara effect. Now, how fans will handle that, how the big donors will handle that, I don't know, but it doesn't put the nail in the coffin for me. And Blue Dove PDX, Cade gives you little to nothing with his legs. Well, have you watched Spencer Petras play? That's my question to you. Okay. Let's see here. Gary's here. Hey, Corey is back. Hey, Corey, go blue. Thank you, Gary, for being here, for being a part of the show. And man, there's a lot of OSU. I'm not used to all this Ohio State, Michigan controversy back and forth. I mean, I understand it's a heated rivalry, and maybe I think there's no question it's the best rivalry in college football, but I just cannot relate to this because the Iowa State rivalry, which I would consider Iowa's biggest rivalry. I don't know what else you look at. Iowa, Minnesota. It's nothing like this as far as, I mean, we got into this. I'm an Iowa guy. And we got into this debate back and forth. I don't even know which side of the debate I'm on because, like I said earlier, Brian asked me, or Michigan caller asked me earlier, who would I pick right now? I'd probably pick Ohio State, but man, like I said, it's 1A, 1B. I would not be surprised to see Michigan somehow win the conference, and heck, they could win a national title. I was not real impressed with JJ against Georgia, or excuse me, against TCU. I know he was better in the second half, but that's the one thing I get. He's probably got bigger upside. He's got better legs than Cade McNamara, but he's got some proving to do, I think, still in 2023. I'm trying to catch up here in the chat. I don't see any other questions that I left off here. We're getting ready to hand things over to John over at the Michigan side of things, and he'll take us through on a separate stream here in a little bit. I think John's going to jump on here with us on this stream to finish off our 2-hour period, this window. This is not me, folks. I'm assuming this is Mark that just commented this. Understand we're talking about a team that was the second or third best team in the country and outplayed the best team in the country. Yes, we're talking about when we're comparing playoff games. You're right, Mark. We're talking about we're splitting hairs, as they say. So, but again, I would say based on the playoffs and based upon recency, Ohio State's defense leaves you something to be desired, but it's nothing near the extreme that Iowa's offense is. And that was, I think, maybe what this comment was in response to. Okay, let's go to Erica. Erica's about to make this an Iowa show. Erica, how you doing?
Hello. Hi. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Connor Johnson in the chat had some questions about our offense, so I figured we could talk about that.
Okay.
He asked about the tight ends, which obviously you already know. Iowa always has, we're TEU. We always have good tight ends. We've got Luke Lachey in still. He's still there. Obviously, Laporta left. And then, of course, we have Eric All from Michigan. And then also Ostrenga, and I can't remember his first name, but Ostrenga. Yeah.
Cohen. Yep.
Yeah. He's supposedly doing very well in practice from what I
read. Wait. I'm sorry. You Ostrenga. Addison Ostrenga. I thought you were talking about Cohen in Tringer is a DB at safety for Iowa.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he's supposedly very good too. He's getting some reps from what I heard in practice and stuff like that. So I think we're pretty good in the TE room, which actually as an Iowa fan, we expect that. I also saw earlier someone making comments about how we're losing so many pieces defensively, which you kind of covered. But I just want to reiterate one thing that Iowa fans know is that we trust in Phil Parker. And if he has the guys in the room who show any type of potential, he's going to make them, all Americans. So I'm not worried about that either.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, they lose a lot at linebacker, Erica, but they don't really lose a lot anywhere else. They lose Riley Moss. That's one guy on defense. They're going to get Jamari Harris back off injury. You're going to get Cooper DeJean back, who was banged up, of course, against Nebraska. So, yeah, I'm with you. I have immense confidence in Phil Parker to figure this thing out. Will they be a top 5 defense, top 10? Again, does it really make that big of a difference? It may to games like Penn State and whatnot. But I think the biggest storyline, without question, is how much of a jump can the Iowa offense make? And as great as a tight end play could be, it was good last year. You could argue very good with Sam Laporta. But I don't buy the people who say, well, they're going to be like they were in 2017 and 2018 with Hawkinson and Fant. Let's not forget, they had Laporta and Lachey this year, and they were awful. They were terrible. So what I don't understand, we lose Laporta, and you bring in Eric All. I don't know why these people think that all of a sudden All and Lachey are going to be the next Hawkinson Fant. Like, you need wide receiver involvement. So I do think they're strong at tight end. They've got to get wide receiver play. They've got to get wide receivers more involved. And obviously the run game has to work for them to be where they want to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think Cade will improve, but I don't think we're going to be like top anything team for offense. So, I mean, I'm realistic about that. But I do think it'll be improved, which, given how Spencer was playing, that's not saying a lot. And then Husker D keeps making these comments about Nebraska. It took you guys 7 or 8 years to beat us, so I wouldn't say that much, number one. Number two, our defensive line is more than okay. It was number 2 in the country last year. Don't know if you're aware of that. So, yeah, the reason we lost is because our quarterback was incompetent. There's no secret there. There's absolutely no secret there. That's a big part of it.
Are you talking about Nebraska?
Yeah, Nebraska.
Yeah. I mean, they lost. Well, and they also, let's not forget, they also lost Cooper DeJean in that game, and Nebraska attacked Iowa.
But that being said, I'm not going to make excuses because some fan bases do that way too much, such as Penn State. when they lost their quarterback and we beat them. I'm not going to play that game. I'll admit, we lost and we deserve to lose. And that's okay, though, because we'll have another 7 or 8 year run against Nebraska anyway. I'm not concerned. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not going to argue. Like I said, the record speaks for itself. I would caution you, Eric, on one thing, and that is this is a totally different regime at Nebraska. So eventually somebody's going to get it done there. They have too much support, and they have too much. They have too many donors. I'm sure they're in a good place NIL wise. So I think you're right. I mean, there's reason to be confident that Iowa still has firm hold on this rivalry, but I'm still waiting to see. I'm waiting to see what happens with Iowa, Wisconsin, and we could see a turn of the torch there. It's a totally different group there in Madison.
Yeah, I think that's going to take time for Nebraska to turn around, though, and I think that there's some chance that by the time Nebraska does turn around, that Kirk's like out the door, because I think he's going to leave sooner than his contract expires.
And how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about?
Yeah, how do you feel about Kirk? Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about Kirk leaving sooner rather than later?
Well, I feel like that's what's going to happen if that's what you're asking. But as far as do I feel that's the right thing, I hate to say it, but I kind of do.
Okay.
I still, how much I respect Kirk. Everybody here knows how much I respect Kirk. That being said, it's not the same football game as it was years ago, and we need to have a more dynamic offense, and it's probably not going to happen under him, especially since we keep retaining Brian and giving him low, like in the basement requirements to stay. I mean,
I'm curious, Erica, you're a big Iowa fan. I'm just curious. What would you give money-wise right now if it guaranteed Brian was gone this year?
What would I give them?
Like just give. What would you put down? Like if you could throw a super chat up right now.
Yeah.
And ensure that Brian was gone, what would be the amount?
How much would I pay? Like
how much would you pay? Based on your
all the money in the world if I had it.
Well, but no. Well, okay. I'm not going to ask you about your personal
your
personal
I'm not
funds.
Personal finances.
But I'm just saying, how much are you tired of this era? Because I talked to a lot of people who would say they would. It's like their number one thing they think about, and I don't sit around thinking about it, but I'm disturbed. The Kirk Ferentz conversation for me hinges on the fan base and the future. And as much as I like Kirk Ferentz, I am afraid that if this thing goes further into a hole, that Kirk Ferentz is going to lose more and more support.
Yeah.
And you and I don't want to see that happen, I know. And I just think a lot of it, unfortunately, revolves around that issue of Brian and how much of a sore thumb he is right now with the fan base.
Well, part of the problem, as we've talked about before, is Kirk is he's a lot of positive things, but one negative trait of his is that he's just crazy stubborn. I mean, it's just nuts how stubborn he is. And that's part of the reason. Obviously, there's the nepotism factor, which we've talked about ad nauseum again already. But besides that, there's a factor of stubbornness there. It's not just because Brian's his son that he doesn't, feel okay with letting him go. It's also because that would make him have to admit that he was wrong about retaining him. And he probably feels like that's going to make him lose face a little bit. And he probably doesn't want to deal with that. So if Brian doesn't swim this year, I have a feeling that he'll be gone. And I think that Kirk might also walk out after him, out that door after him.
I think if I'm not making any bold predictions, but don't be surprised if Kirk leaves, if Brian fails again this year and fail. I mean, how do we interpret that? I don't know. But so Erica, how much would you give?
If money weren't
an option, how much would you give?
Oh my God, millions.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have millions in the bank. I'm not saying that because I don't.
Yeah. Well,
but no, I mean, seriously, like, I understand that some people are scared about losing that, like, 9-10 win, 8-9-10 win game streak we have. Because even when we're down, we still win 7 games. And for a lot of teams, that's not a down year. That's like a year they'd like to have, like Nebraska last year. And the prior years before that, they'd love to have 7 wins. They couldn't get there, even though they beat us. That's not the point. Their whole season, if you look at it holistically, they couldn't get 7 wins. And I would say that 7 wins for Nebraska would be successful at how things stand today. Obviously, it's going to be a different conversation once Nebraska, once they get used to the new coach and all this. Yeah, they're probably going to be very good. But as it stands right now, Nebraska is a team like Northwestern. Northwestern's another one. They would kill to have 7 wins a year probably after last year. So
Yeah.
I get that, but I feel that we've been at that level for a very, very, very long time. And I feel like if we want to get to the next level and we want to make use of our elite defense and our elite special teams, we need a good offense. And good is good enough. We don't have to have, the best offense in the country, even if the defense stays the way it is. The one thing I am concerned about, though, that being said, if Kirk does leave, I'm afraid that Phil will also go. And that's concerning to me, obviously. I don't think LeVar Woods would go. I think he would stay. I think he might become head coach one day. I think he'd be a very good candidate for that. But yeah, Phil leaving would be a concern for me if Kirk were to leave.
Erica, before we let you go, Clay wants to jump on and ask both of us a question. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Clay, welcome to the show. Clay.
How you doing?
Hi, Clay.
Can you hear me? How you doing?
Yes.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wondering, since we're going to this 3-6, your guys' 3 rivals want to be for Iowa.
Well, we already have more than 3 rivals. Do you mean like if we could choose any team in the country that weren't the current ones?
I think he's saying, what rivals do we want to retain?
Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska, or do you want somebody else?
The 3 rivals in the Big Ten
that you want to
play. The 3 rivals in the Big Ten would be Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. But I mean, if we're just talking conference scheduling, but I mean, I don't know that you're going to be able to retain all 3 because we're talking about. I don't know what the latest talk on scheduling and divisions is, but aren't we talking more about retaining 2 and having 2 rivals that are basically on the schedule every year? Am I wrong on that?
I didn't hear. I thought we were doing a 3-6.
Okay. Well, if it's
schedule.
3, then it's Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Minnesota.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't see us getting rid of.
Yeah.
I don't see us getting rid of Iowa State. I know they're not in our conference, but if we're restricting it, or if we're talking about what the current rivals are, I don't think we want to get rid of Iowa State. I'd rather get rid of Nebraska because I'm tired of hearing about how they won the championship last century.
Yeah, for the Big Ten schedule, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd like to keep Wisconsin. I think they're going to be dynamic with the new coach. I'd like to keep Wisconsin. Minnesota honestly doesn't do much for me because PJ Fleck has never beat us. So it's not. I mean, we beat them year after year. He's never beat us.
Well, hold on a second though, Erica. Teddy from Texas says, "How come the Gophers are better than the Hawkeyes?"
Well, Teddy's wrong because they've never beat us since PJ Fleck has been there. I just explained that.
Poor Teddy.
So Teddy's comment not accurate.
We love you, Teddy. Erica doesn't agree with you, so we love
you,
Teddy.
It's not just me who doesn't agree; it's the record.
Yeah. Well, it's true that rivalry. When talking about one-sided rivalries, that rivalry has been the epitome of one-sided for since 2014?
9 years, something like that.
Yeah, I believe 2014 was the last time Michigan won that game.
You mean Minnesota?
Or I'm sorry, Minnesota. And by the way, R. Gross says, I don't think Erica understands.
What don't I understand?
I don't know. I'm just trying to get
some people who are making comments should come on this chat right now and tell me what they're getting at.
I'm sorry. I'm just riling things up here, Erica. I'm just riling things up.
No, it's fine. We got to give the people what they want. I want to answer, but I don't know what he thinks I don't understand.
I appreciate it, Clay. Clay, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's good. And I think you guys should keep Kirk Ferentz, but you got to do something with the offense.
Yep, I agree. Thank you, sir.
I think everybody agrees with that. I'd also like to ask Husker D to call in if they're going to keep making comments as well.
Husker D. We won't even put Husker D's comments up here. So Ryan wants to go before we hand this over to John. Ryan wants to go. Ryan, why is your camera off? Let's turn the camera on, Ryan. Where's the camera, Ryan?
I have not put my face on today.
You what?
He hasn't put his face on today.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, you wanted to come back and talk to John in 20 minutes when you're done? No, there you go. There it is.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Erica, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Chicago to Chicago.
Oh, you're in Chicago too?
Well, outside suburbs, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm in the suburbs too, yeah.
Let me turn the Cubs down. Sorry about that. Go Cubs. Hey, Erica. Teddy, I don't know what he's saying. You're absolutely right. If this was a two conference rival thing going forward, because we got to get California involved. Unfortunately, I hate it. I guess Nebraska would have to be one because we're the only bordering state. And we got the Black Friday thing going. And I guess just because of tradition, I think it would be Minnesota, which really pains me because I grew up on the border of Wisconsin, and the only thing I've ever liked about Wisconsin is Coach Close. So, yeah.
Well, hold on a second, Ryan. Sam Logic is from Wisconsin. Megan Gustafson is from Wisconsin, and Stremlo, the
Warnock too is
Warnock's
from
Wisconsin. A lot of really good women's
Okay,
basketball
there's
players
5
from
things good about Wisconsin.
Okay.
Logic, Warnock, who else?
Nate Stanley's from Wisconsin, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, and Wisconsin Dells. All right. Other than that,
and cheese. Don't forget cheese.
I can do without that. But I just, the Wisconsin rivalry is so important to me personally. And just, there was what was it, maybe 10 years ago, Corey and Erica, that we didn't play Wisconsin every year. There was a little bit of a lull there. And that was just flat out painful and wrong. Like, why we got to play California state of Los Angeles in the southern portion, or Rutgers, but not Wisconsin is just
Rutgers.
Crime.
I mean, you know what? I think you've heard me talk about before on Corey's show. Like, I don't like this Big Ten with Rutgers and Maryland. Like, it should have stayed regional. I'm not for any of that. But I also realize that everything's about money. So what are we going to do?
I mean, what, we're going to be 16 teams. Are they going to just expand to 18 or 20? Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, with the Pac-12 deal too, who knows what's going to end up happening?
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Corey, it's good to see you. Unfortunately, my kids stole all my Iowa Smokehouse salsa, so it's all gone now.
So you just that's why you order more. That's why you order more, and
there's a problem there, Corey. It takes a day or two to get it shipped, and you're out.
Well, no, you order more. Listen, you order more, and then you run. I'm sure. There's no Fairway in the Chicago area, is there?
No.
No.
There's no Hy-Vee. There's no. I don't know if they deal. I have to ask them if they deal with some grocers in the Chicago area. I'm not sure.
Maybe Mariano's has it, because they have a lot of that type of specialty stuff.
That's a good idea. I'll check it out. Hey, anyway, guys, thank you very much. Erica, you're awesome. Corey, I think you're awesome. You guys have a great evening. Go Hawks. And Lucas Van Nuss will be the most overachieving player in the draft. I can't wait to hear the narrative about how this guy is a legitimate top 15 pick and he didn't even start a game. But we have a good player who's going to play his 6th year that played ahead of him. And that's, a blessing and a curse, because it is a little embarrassing. But still, I can't say Noah Shannon or Wagner were bad players either. It's just how good we are.
They're going to be deep, Ryan. That's for sure. They'll be deep on that side.
Spoiled for choice.
And I assume you're both big Gary Barta fans. So.
Sorry, hi everybody. It's John.
Oh my God,
I had to crack up over that one.
Hey John, how you doing, man?
There.
If you guys run into Gary,
yes.
give him a big smile for me and tell him hi.
He'll give you a big smile too, Ryan.
I don't want him to. I'm not going to go any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Real quick before we get to John and Erica, you're free to stay on here. But Danny says, will the offensive line be good this year? I mean, I don't know how anybody could say yes or no because we don't know what's going to happen in spring and in summer.
There's already injuries piling up too.
There's injuries, and you could argue they regressed last year. And one thing that Don Patterson always brings out, and it's simple common sense, it's logic, but it's true. You can do all you want in spring ball and in summer and in fall camp, and you can work as hard as you want to work. But guess what? All your opponents are working hard too. So,
Right.
like, I don't know. Maybe they bring in Dejon Parker from Saginaw Valley State. He's a D2 kid, looks the part, but he's D2.
He also is injured.
Yeah, he's been banged up. Rusty Fett's going to be coming in and working, but he's a Miami, Ohio guy. I mean, they don't have proven Power 5 guys, and that's just offensive line. I mean, I like Seth Anderson a lot at receiver, but again, he's never played at this level.
And he's injured too.
They got
Anyone
injuries.
Noticing a pattern?
Well, I notice a pattern of excuses. I notice a pattern of excuses. I notice a pattern. And listen, if things fail on that side of the ball, injuries are the furthest thing from an excuse.
Yeah.
If injuries are an excuse, it's because you haven't built depth and you haven't built stability on your roster. So
it's like we always said, it goes back to the head coach and to the offensive coordinator, and we know who those people are. And I don't know what we're going to do about that, but that's actually one thing that I was going to say is Dejon Parker, I think, really has potential to be fantastic, but he's injured. I mean, it's really frustrating because I think he is somebody who has that potential, and he's, big enough and everything, but now he's injured.
Erica, there were rumors about Y.A. Black possibly moving from the defensive line to O-tackle. That hasn't transpired that I'm aware of, and I would think that if you were going to make that move, you'd make it at the beginning of spring, and it hasn't happened. So that would tell me one of two things: either A, he didn't want to move, or B, they think that what they have at tackle is just as good, if not better, than moving a guy from the D line. Talk about a guy who looks apart. I mean, I've stood next to the guy. He's just he's a train. So anyways, but and Stan says, do y'all really want Kirk to stay? Defense and past success aside, he's put your program into a place where 9 wins is fine as long as the alumni and fans keep showing up to games. Well, Stan, you're asking us.
Is 9 wins fine though? Like, do you
depends who you
9
ask.
wins is okay?
Depends who you ask. I think it's really average. I'm tired of just seeing 9 wins year after year, though.
I mean, what is the question here? Do we want Kirk to stay? He's been here 24 years. What kind of a question? I mean, I respect the question, Stan. I know he's not being snarky, but what does that mean? I mean, he only has a certain number of years left. So when you say, well, do you want him to stay or do you want him to move on? He's been here 24 years. At some point, he's going to move on. So the question is, do you rather him move on sooner rather than later? Do you just milk that cow until that poor thing is bone dry?
Look, he's going to end up going out like Hayden Fry did, where
Hayden Fry was sick. Hayden Fry had cancer and was sick.
Right, but he also didn't perform well as a coach that year, which the cancer is the reason why. That's true. I'm not saying that I want Kirk to get cancer, of course not. But when I say he's going to go out like Hayden, I mean he's going to lose a bunch of games, and he's going to, like I said earlier, lose face, and he's going to leave on a low note, which I think would be a darn shame given what he's given this program.
Or what he does, Erica, is they go out this year with an average to below average offense because of a guy who's proven it at a high level in Cade McNamara. They win 9 to 10 games because of a cake schedule, and he rides off into the sunset after 2023. That's the alternative here.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Brian, I don't know about Brian. I don't know if we're going to get.
I know about Brian.
That's the nicest thing you could possibly say about Brian.
I know about Brian.
I know about Brian, but I don't know. Like, what I don't know is we didn't specify, and we've talked about this before too. They did not specify that the 25 points have to be offensive points, which is a big mistake.
Total points.
Total mistake.
Yeah, don't. Even though I'm going to do my best to get a sponsor for our Brian Ferentz points per game tracker on my show, believe me, do not read into that because, again, you'd have to. I don't even know if they could sleepwalk their way to 25 points per game with that defense and special teams unit, the best kicker in the Big Ten, maybe the best in the country, along with a defense that scores. Plus, your standard, your meter to hit is 7 wins, which includes a bowl game. So you can go 6-6 win the American Standard Toilet Bowl and find a way to 7 wins, and they've met their mark. And we hold a party for Brian. So
and it's not, it's just not good enough. I mean, like I said earlier, there are plenty of teams that would love to get to 9 wins and never do, and I can respect that. But I like to think that Iowa deserves better and that we could do better if we had the right pieces in offense and if people stop getting injured. And Husker D, again, I'd like to cordially invite you to call in because you keep talking trash. And if you're going to do that, you should at least have the guts to show yourself and talk to us.
Well, question. So I think you could win 9 or 10 wins on the defense alone.
Yeah, probably.
Well, they won Ryan, sorry, John.
Yeah.
John, they won 8 games this year with maybe the worst offense in the country and a tough schedule because they play Michigan State and Ohio State. So imagine what they can do with a better quarterback, no Ohio State, no Michigan. That's what I'm saying. That's why if I'm talking about the future for Kirk Ferentz, I will not be shocked if this is Kirk's final year. It would not shock me at all. And the way that contract is set up for Brian, it gives them an easy way out. If Kirk leaves, it's easy for them to just say, well, Brian didn't meet his mark. He's going to move on. If Brian does make his mark, it's incentive and it's a way for them to pass him along and say, well, he met what we wanted him to meet. And even though Kirk is moving on, we're going to retain Brian. And boy, I don't know who the head coach would be if Brian stays. But I would not be surprised if Kirk leaves.
If Brian somehow becomes head coach, man.
Oh no.
Oh.
Is that the nightmare scenario?
It is the nightmare scenario because he doesn't deserve it. And there's other people who on the coaching staff who do.
Well, we've talked about this a couple of times. And there was some back and forth in chat on this, but we talked about like what Cade McNamara needs basically to be at the level that he was at Michigan, right? O-line, which you guys are transferring in some pieces there, tight end play. You've got your Luke Lachey and Eric All now coming in. And receiver is important, but not as important as it would be in another program because.
Well, you say that
we're screwed anyway because we're down. We're down receivers.
You say that, John, but what do you base it? I mean, you're basing that off what they've already done. They haven't had good wide receiver play, so we don't know what the ceiling is. They've gotten by without it, but their offense has been trash.
But the reason we don't have good receiver play is because Spencer could not get it to them most of the time.
That's part of the reason, but the other part of the reason is because they don't have good receivers.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Although we had one in Charlie Jones and he left. I mean, I wonder why he left.
Because he wasn't being used.
Let's think about it.
He wasn't used.
That's right. And if he wants to play for the NFL, he was right to transfer out
True.
as much as I disliked it.
Here's what we have. Here's what we have. You have 2 factors going on. You have below average talent with below average coaching. So what do you get? You get dog crap. That's what you get. That's what you get. I'm just saying you got to have one of either. You got to have either really good recruiting or really good development. And on a defense and special, they don't recruit great anywhere, but they have great development and coaching on special teams and defense. They have below average coaching on offense. That's why you get 130th out of 131 teams. That's just
I was going to say you've got the corn nuggets in there too, because that's the defense, the elite. You guys do have a defense that's able to stop first round draft picks. So if you watch the Ohio State game, which you guys both did, against Iowa, Jackson Smith and Jigba played in that game briefly, and the defense was stopping him. And if you guys had an offense to go along with it, that game would have been a radically different football game.
In Ohio State's defense, that was also his first game back. He was still dealing with the hammy. So point taken. John, are you taking over this stream or are you going over to the other stream?
So Mark asked me to start a new one.
Okay.
So I put the link in the chat here. We're gonna all head over to Ryan. I rep Michigan, but in this capacity, I'm kind of moderator / whatever you want to call me. But I also host the Michigan Wolverines show every Wednesday. But yeah, we're all gonna head over to the 8 p.m. stream. And everybody's welcome to call back in and hang out.
So final thing before I say goodbye and you guys switch over streams. This question from
sorry,
you're good. This question from Garrick. Can you answer this question because this was from earlier and you'd be better positioned to answer the question, John. Why is it hard for Michigan to bring in five-star receivers?
Why is it hard for Ohio State to bring in 5-star running backs?
And why is it hard for Iowa to get 5-star defensive players? I mean, that's another question. I don't understand those questions.
Ohio State and USC and Tennessee are in the best position to get 5-star wide receiver talent. Why? Because they have offenses predicated on lobbing it down the field. And so, of course, you're going to want to play there. And plus, Brian Hartline is probably one of the best wide receiver recruiters in college football history.
A little bit different, I will say, Eric, a little bit different when you're talking about Iowa's inability to bring in 5-star talent on defense. We are talking about Michigan and Ohio State, two of the biggest blue bloods in the sport.
Yeah.
So,
no, I understand that. It's just I would argue that we're defensively, we merit 5-star players.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm not trying to argue that for the offense because that's not at all the case with offense.
That's what makes it so impressive. What Phil Parker and Norm Parker, what they've done here over the last 24 years, they've had top 10 offenses basically every year, in spite of the fact that they don't recruit great on that side of the ball. Any parting shots for let's see, where is it at? I want to find, before I go here, Erica, just want to make sure I find.
While you're looking, I don't see the link to the new video in the chat.
I'll post it again.
Here it is. Okay. Any final comments for Husker D, Erica?
8 good years out of 28 seasons. Don't forget your Cinderella 2009 season. You know, I've made all my comments. Husker D won't call in, so I'm not going to engage anymore.
Husker D. Okay.
Yeah, what does the D like? I saw all their comments about the corn stuff. It's like, come on, get new material, people. It's just like they always talk about winning championships last century, and like that gives them any type of authority.
He looks like a happy Husker D in the picture, don't you think, John? Doesn't he look like a Doesn't he look like a happy little Husker D?
The definition of happiness.
Okay, all right. John's going to take over, folks, for the 8 p.m. block. We'll end this broadcast and we'll continue the second half of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out for the last 2 hours. And John, we'll see you over the other stream.
Yep. See you over there, John.
Bye.